Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Y'all, I always just think about DJ Nightbot. Oh, hold on, let me turn off my dehumidifier. There we go. I always think about DJ Nightbot, and that was like his jam, you know? Like he wrote that song, the intro. Like, do you guys ever think about that? When it's like, when it's like boom, 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 boom. Anyway, and then he pops up. Anyway, just he's so cute. Love you, DJ Nightbot. Y'all, what a day. What a day it has been. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I just don't even know what to say. Today has been a crazy day. Today's been a crazy day. My day started out with the craziest phone call. And I can't even tell you guys the surprise then that I had when I saw that Runkle was on SDS. Holy crap. I just don't even know. Like, all the things. So we had a day off of court today, and we are back on tomorrow, and I will be there to cover it. How long do you guys think Trooper Proctor is going to stay on the stand under cross-examination? I guess the real question is how long is it going to take for all the blood to drain from his body with all the open wounds? That's the real question. Could go pretty quickly depending on how much he's missing there, right? But y'all, what a crazy day. Let's start with, I have a little video, short one, that I made. Okay, here we go. So this is a little video of, hold on, let me pause the music. I have a little video here that I've made. So this is from the Commonwealth's motion, which was filed on Thursday. So I actually covered this live, and then shortly thereafter, Laura, who I love, Peter Tragos, covered it. But I thought it was really funny because we made a lot of the same points. And anyway, I kind of put a little clip together. Again, it's really short, but just it kind of ends up being, I think, like a little bit of like almost like a conversation of like me making a comment or asking a question, him answering it, and vice versa. Anyway, so this is just a little bit, for fun, but let's just go ahead and watch this, see what you guys think.
Final pretrial hearing on February 15, 2024, when asked.
That jumped right in. There was not even a little title thing, but I was going to say, hopefully you guys like it. That's what I was saying.
During a final pretrial hearing on February 15, 2024, when asked by the court whether there was any dispute about a canine's involvement or canine DNA, Attorney Yannetti indicated no, and that the defense was not pursuing such claim. It was not until April 29th, 2024, during opening statements. So Yannetti said no. I'm wondering what that exact language was, because he said canine's involvement or canine DNA. So maybe they're not going to say, listen, we know there was no canine DNA, but there's reasons for that. Whatever. I don't know. All right. Opening statements, where contrary to the court's prior ruling that third-party culprit evidence was not admissible or appropriate for opening statements, Attorney Yannetti unfairly prejudiced the Commonwealth by arguing Karen Reed was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death, and that means somebody else did. And then, surprisingly, proceeded to claim that the defendant's injuries were consistent with a dog attack. Okay, so I guess he did mention an opening.
It was not until April 29th, 2024, during opening statements, where, contrary to the court's prior ruling, that third-party culprit evidence was not admissible or appropriate for opening statements, Attorney Yannetti unfairly prejudiced the Commonwealth by... okay, I have problems with this. Why? Okay, well, something's wrong here, and here's why.
So here's my issue there. If she didn't do it, somebody else must have, is a little different than saying it was Mr. Albert who committed this crime. Okay, there's some differences there.
Here's the statement. Karen B was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death, and that means that somebody else did. Yes, that is something that would qualify as something like third-party culprit evidence. I'm going to start with this. Well, I knew nothing of this case until the trial started. It's clear that that was their strategy all along, first of all. Second of all, whether that was their strategy or wasn't their strategy, it's my opinion that it was. If indeed the court ruled that third-party culprit evidence was not admissible or appropriate for opening statements, guess what would have happened? Judge Bev would have shut that shit down. And even if that didn't happen, guess what? Freaking Lolly could have objected and it would have been sustained.
Yeah. I'm just pausing real quick to say, I also saw this about the majority women. I saw something about 10 women on the jury. You know, I guess it could happen. Usually they try to make those numbers a little bit more balanced from, you know, with juries, but is it possible? Sure. Honestly, some things are just so bad it transcends all boundaries, you know? I think it could be 0 women on that jury. Honestly, I think man, woman, child, what was it? TV, what was the thing from man, woman, television, whatever. Anyway, I don't think it doesn't really matter what it was or is, or if it's inanimate or not inanimate. It's like those, good luck finding somebody, maybe except for Trooper Proctor, who's not going to read those texts and be like, oh yeah, okay, done. You know what I mean? But you know, if it's more women on the jury, then I guess that's just, you know, they might just hate him even more. But I think that no matter what, and I still keep going back to this, the solo cups, and I just hope that somebody after the trial, I hope somebody in the jury speaks out and you know, or more than one person, and I would love to know their thoughts. But I'm still putting my money on the solo cups.
This is accurate. So something's wrong here. Either Lolly's making shit up, or I guess that's really the only option.
Yes,
and here it is, 6 weeks later. Like, y'all, you guys know how this works, right? It's like,
yep.
If it was really an issue, it would Judge Bev, even though maybe she shouldn't be intervening, she probably would have intervened because that's what she does.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it is up to the other party to make an objection for the judge to rule upon. And if you don't make the objection, too bad, so sad. You snooze, you lose.
But more importantly, and I could be wrong, right? Remembering all the way back to opening statements, but did Lally object?
He did not.
And ask the court to strike that, which would have been the appropriate remedy at the time. The court could have analyzed and see if this violated her court order, her pretrial order, and she would have instructed him not to go any further there and struck it in front of the jury so it wouldn't even be part of the record. But instead, Lally didn't do that I remember.
Nope.
And instead did this. In light of this, on May 15, 2024, the Commonwealth called Terry Kuhn, a forensic scientist, to testify that there was no canine DNA present on the samples provided to her veterinary forensic laboratory. So he decided to, instead of striking it from the record, provide evidence to rebut what was said in opening. And now that door is open. As far as I'm concerned, the jury knows the dog is a question in this case.
Yeah.
And they've heard expert testimony from the state saying no dog DNA.
Ms. Kuhn did not render an opinion about the cause or appearance of John O'Keefe's injuries, nor offered any testimony about whether John O'Keefe's injuries were consistent or inconsistent with an animal attack. Well, of course she didn't. That's not her job. Her job is just to test the DNA.
Now, he says Ms. Kuhn did not render an opinion about the cause or appearance of John O'Keefe's injuries, nor offered any testimony about whether John O'Keefe's injuries were consistent or inconsistent with an animal attack. I agree, she didn't. Why didn't she? Did you have the opportunity to ask her, Mr. Lally, and you didn't? Was there an objection in a sidebar that we don't know about, or some other argument that prevented you from asking that? Or did you just choose not to?
So, y'all, a couple things briefly. I had another remembrance. That's not the word. Hi, DSN. Happy to see you, my friend. I was remembering also today. Today was a big day for the brain. I was also remembering about this. I know Fender particularly loves this clip. Shout out to Fender. But I was also remembering when it comes to the solo cups, right? My gut just keeps telling me, but I was also, and that was a moment in time, but then I was remembering this.
You wouldn't use a solo cup.
I'm sorry, what?
Objection, Your Honor. Solo cup.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about, you never know. Okay. I was thinking about how with jurors, right? Let's just say you've got jurors, any of them or all of them, and they've no experience with trials and they've no experience with evidence and they've never seen CSI, they've never watched a trial, and they don't know any of the things. And let's just say that by some stretch of the imagination, they don't understand or wouldn't have the knowledge or the background that there's anything wrong with the solo cup. Let's just say that they're like, not seeing the problem there, right? And sure, like on cross, it was asked if like that's their standard practice, and he's like, no, blah blah. But maybe, well, let's just say that it didn't quite register to them, not to any fault of their own, but let's just say it didn't register just how unimaginably, I don't even know. I don't even have a word. Just how unimaginable. Let's go with that. How unimaginable it is. I am so glad that when Terry Kuhn came in as an expert witness, and the first and only expert witness so far in this case, and this was so brilliant. This was a brilliant move on Jackson's part because she was so credible. She was so credible. She was so great. And again, let's just watch this clip again, because remember, she came in, I don't know, it was probably a week later, maybe a little bit longer. There'd been some time that had gone by. Maybe for some people on the jury that didn't understand the significance of the solo cups, they might have kind of forgotten about it. They might not have really fully understood the gravity of it. But then,
You wouldn't use a solo cup.
I'm sorry, what?
Objection, Your Honor. Solo cup.
that right there is beautiful, because the defense waited from, and I'll never for the life of me remember that law enforcement officer's name, Mr. Solo Cup, I call him. I'll never remember his name. Anyway, the defense waited from him for, I don't know, a week or week and a half, something, until she came on, and she was very credible on direct, and then even on cross, they got started on cross, and then that. And it's like, should there be any confusion about these solo cups? Let's just set that straight right now, right here, right now. Let's just settle that score. And her reaction is so priceless. Yes, this is the terribly written motion. Yes, ma'am. Blackwater, good one. Well done. Oh, hold on. We have a DSN. DSNism. Doodly-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me turn it up.
It's a house.
There's a chicken.
There we go. Too bad Nightbot doesn't automatically change the volume if it's night driving versus other things. But anyway, that's one of the things that I thought was interesting. And then also I wanted to say that as I've been watching some of the testimony again, rewatch Crew, even though I streamed it, because there was so much, surely enough, we do hear in the testimony that the medical examiner is a female. However, I've completely missed any, what's the right word? Like any pronouns to that effect as it was happening live, because I was too busy trying to stay alive due to the shock and the horror, to quote Jen McCabe. But nonetheless, Squirrely Crystal Ball is accurate there where I made that prediction. I do believe I have timestamped that from when it happened live. And the other thing I wanted to say is I did want to give her the credit, because initially I was really mortified, because when they were talking about, Trooper Proctor rather, was talking about like trying to get her to change her determination and rule it a homicide and whatnot. And it felt very scary, like to me, like very scary that, and this was before, okay, let me clarify. This is before he then says that it was undetermined, right? So it was very scary to me that there was another thing that was influenced, corrupted, but then of course it comes out in his testimony that she ruled the manner of death as undetermined. And I think at that point we started talking about the nature of what, an undetermined manner of death means. And I didn't get the chance to say that that was really good news, because what that means is that while perhaps they as in Proctor and friends, maybe tried to influence her and tried to get her to change her determination, she didn't. So that gives us hope. And that does still leave the medical examiner as potentially maybe one of the only people involved in this entire thing that has any type of like integrity, ethics, and is trustworthy and not biased and whatever. Because of the fact that it stayed undetermined. They were unsuccessful there in influencing her. So I apologize to the medical examiner, even though they won't ever hear this. I really was not trying to jump to any conclusions. I'm just so happy that they were not influenced by whatever shenanigans were being wrought upon them by Trooper Proctor. And what else was I going to say about Trooper Proctor with this? I just lost I lost it. Yeah. So the other thing is I had the most incredible phone call today. I don't know if you guys saw when we did it actually happened around the beginning of the trial, the Karen trial. It was before I started covering it, but it was around the beginning of the trial. And again, at this point, I was just getting into it. Like I hadn't planned on watching it. And actually at the time I didn't even know all the names of the attorneys and stuff like that. But we did the great opening statements. It was a Saturday night special. And it was Mark Eiglarsh. And so he's been like a hero of mine ever since that trial, the Scott Peterson trial. And I know that there's some people that watched it, but not everybody did. And there were other trials going on at the time and whatnot. So I got a text message this morning, and it was from a number I didn't know from Florida. And my phone put in the name as Mark Eiglarsh. I don't know how, but it did. So it was from Mark Eiglarsh. And it was like, "Hi, did you get my email?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Mark Eiglarsh, what?" And at first I thought, I was like, "Is this like a spam like thing?" Because like, then I was like, "But why would anyone use his name for spam?" Like, it didn't make any sense. So I went and checked my email, and then I read the email, and I had an email from him. And it was clearly from him because it had the law firm, it had the, it had all the stuff that makes you realize, like, this is, believable and whatnot, right? And like, the email said something to the effect of like, "Hey, like I saw your video of the opening statements, and I just wanted to thank you. You did a great job," stuff like that, right? And so then I was sending a text back and saying that I got the email, and I was like texting and being like, "Yeah, by the way, like I don't even have words. Like my jaw's on the floor, And then this phone number, who was Mark Eiglarsh, was actually trying to call me. My phone, being an iPhone, had screened it out as like a robocall or a spam or whatever. And so it does that thing where it like auto blocks it. And so he texted me as I was texting him, and he was like, "I'm trying to call you." And I was like, I couldn't see the calls coming in, but you know how you have to do it a certain number of times. So what happened was, I guess he kept calling. Like on the fourth time, my phone finally showed that there was a call coming through, and because I had it unlocked as I was texting, I was able to answer it. And I was like, "Hi, I'm so sorry that I thought this was like a spam or a robocall or whatever." And I recognized his voice immediately, and he goes, "I just have to say, you play the shit out of the violin." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what's happening right now." Like, not only I knew the voice very well, and I was like, what on earth? And so I was like, what is happening? And so he was like talking about my violin videos and stuff. And like, he was like, he watched them, which is crazy. And then he we talked on the phone for like half an hour or something. And you guys, I'll never forget this phone call for the rest of my life because this was insane. And he was saying how like, I felt it during the trial, and every time that if I watch that opening statement, I feel like, and I've even said it, I'm sure I said it like to you guys, like he was alone. He did not have a paralegal, he didn't have an assistant attorney, nobody. It was just him. And you could feel it. I could feel it, like that the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And every day in that trial, I just kept thinking to myself, he's carrying the whole world on his shoulders because he has this client who is relying on him and depending on him. And he's single-handedly one person without any assistance. Like even freaking Lolly, even though that's already weird enough that he's the only one doing witnesses, he's got people sitting over there at that table that are looking things up for him and doing documents and, assisting in all the other ways. I don't know why he's the only one talking, but whatever. But Mark had it was just him. And I just kept feeling it for him. And like, but his energy never wavered. His positivity never wavered. He would take these risks and get shut down by the judge, and he did not waver, and he didn't miss a beat. And it was just so incredible. And anyway, but here's what he said. He said that he was like, you have no idea how much that meant to me, because he was like, I'm going to get emotional talking about it. He said during that trial, he said that was a really hard time for me. He says that was like a dark time in my life where I was all alone and I had no help and I felt so much pressure. And he was saying all the things that I just said, which are the things that I'm like, I even told him, I was like, yeah, that I felt that, like I felt that through the TV, And he was like, because I just wanted justice for my client. Like I just wanted to do things right. And he said that it was so traumatizing for him that he had yet to go back and watch any of the trial since it happened. And I don't know if y'all know, but shortly after the trial, he was on Lawyer, and it's the first and only time that Peter's had a guest on there apart from his dad was Mark Eiglarsh. And Mark came on there, but he said that he had never gone back and watched any of the trial. He said because he couldn't, it was too traumatizing for him. And then he said that what happened to him was like, I think yesterday he was on YouTube for whatever reason. And like somehow my video came on. And here's what he said. He said that he was like doing whatever. And he heard it was about to start, like, his voice, like with opening statements. And he said that, but then he heard, and he said, quote, little voice. He said, then I heard this little voice in the background making comments. And he said he thought that I was an attorney. And that it was the first time he'd been able to listen to it, because he said that my commentary helped him remember and helped like show him, that like people got it. And that like, I think that part of the reason why he couldn't watch it was like, and I get it. It's very similar. There's a lot of people who are like musicians, for example, right? That can't go back and listen to their own recordings. There's also certain filmmakers that can't go back and watch their own films. And so I totally understand the sentiment of like, it's so terrifying and daunting. And you need it's like it would almost have to happen on accident / against your will to do that. I totally get it so much. And so it's almost like it came on, he didn't intend to listen to it, right? But then he heard the comments, and I have to say, a lot of the comments that I'm saying are reacting to y'all's comments, right? Y'all's questions and y'all's comments. Because I actually said in that video, I was like, I'm gonna try not to talk, or talk over him, but I kept pausing it. And anyway, I just, as I was listening to this, I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. Like, it's a really incredible moment when it's like, he had such an impact, a positive impact on my life. And that was such a defining case for me, and was the really first time I was getting to see somebody in that capacity, defend somebody in that capacity. And the thought that, like, you know, it's like, oh, it's all you could ever want, right? Is like if there's somebody who you look up to and somebody who helped you and you respect and like that, like it's all you could ever want is that maybe potentially there's some way that you could have helped them in return, but like no one would ever think that that's a thing that it could even happen. Like I certainly wouldn't. Anyway, you know, it's so funny because like on all these live streams, I always make the joke, right? Like shout out, there's like shout out to Radiohead, shout out to whoever, like name anybody, right? It's people that I'm like, will literally never, ever, ever watch these live streams. I guarantee you that I did a shout out to Mark Eiglarsh at some point, either might probably during that live stream or maybe subsequently, but like, I guarantee you. And like, as a joke, as like, they're never going to see this. Like, why would they? And so it's like the thought that they would see it and then actually email, text, and call to thank me. Like it just, I still can't wrap my head around it, but it is a phone call I'll never forget for the rest of my life. That's for sure. And that it helped him in some way, you know. In my mind, that it's so insane because I'm like, how is he not getting like, how are people not saying this to him every day? I don't know. Like it doesn't, I don't understand because he's like, I mean, again, he's the only person Laura Uno's ever had on the show apart from his dad. Like there's that, right? I mean, Laura Uno like would literally like go marry him if he could. I guarantee you. Like he freaking, you know, and like, I'm sure there's tons of people. It's just, he was so inspirational. And I even remember like that night when I was doing that, I remember there were people that were watching that were in the comments and in the chat and stuff that actually did see the trial live and were saying the same thing. They're like, this was so inspirational. Like you know, I don't know. It's like, that was just really incredible to see. And I never really thought I would get to see something like that again. But I will say that Jackson, Yannetti are thankfully, you know, on the same level in terms of like the quality and the ability and the talent, but also the passion. And I'm so happy to get to see that again. And in fact, I think in the video, we actually do draw a couple different like similarities between the opening statements of Yannetti and Mark Eiglarsh, because there are a lot of similarities there. And that's a good thing. Like that's a good thing that we don't just see this once, you know, we get to see it again. And I don't know. And like at the very end of the phone call, he was like, you know, like this is my personal phone number. Like you have my number now. And he was like, if you ever need anything, call me. Or like, you know, if you ever need anything, just let me know. Like what? So I don't know, man. Like it's crazy. I feel like, you know, like a comparison to this for me with like violin would be like if Bach were still alive, Bach calling me up and being like, hey, I heard you play my sonata and it was like great or something, you know, whatever. And I would just be like, at first I'd be like, yeah, right, this isn't really Bach. And then if I realized it really was Bach, I would be like trying to fight gravity of falling on the floor. And like, that's literally what happened to me today. but when it comes to like trial coverage and commentary, and the fact that he thought like I was an attorney is insane also. Like, not that he's like, you know, and y'all know what I mean. Like, I just, like, it's just beyond what I could ever imagine. And, you know, it really, it's like, well, you know what? Like, like, if I can help one person in any way, like, that's enough for me, you know? And like, but like if I can help, and if I can help somebody who has helped so many other people, you know, like, oh man, it's like, it's just crazy. It's hard to even articulate like the way that that is of like, I don't know, like never would have expected. Um, yes, yes. Yeah, Mark Eiglarsh. Yes. I think you were there when we watched that. Thank you, DSN. Yeah. Yeah, I like, yeah. It's right. DSN says some days nothing happens, other days one of your heroes contacts you. That's exactly it. Just out of the blue. And you know, an email, a text message, and phone calls. And the other thing is like when my iPhone is like, you're a spammer and blocks the phone number, he called over and over again until it went through. Incredible. Incredible. Like that, I like even a regular person easily could have given up after like 2 times of trying to call, right? Like that would have been totally understandable. I think he even left a voicemail. I haven't even looked. I'm still just like, you know, it's crazy. But yeah, literally it's I don't even have a way to I think 100,000 years go by and I would still be sitting here at a loss for words over that. But I just know that, you know, people could go a career being an attorney, right? Decades, and probably not get to talk to somebody like him. And you know, it's like, anyway, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that, you know, the way that he put it, he said, this is so him, right? Like, I say that if you watched his trial and you watched him on Laura, you know, you would know what I mean by this. But when I say that this is so him, but like, he said something like, you know, he said to me, he was like, I'm just so grateful that the universe brought us together. You know, it's like, and that's another thing that just really impressed me about him too, is like, he just is so genuine and humble. And like, anyway, it's just funny. And his voice just on the phone was like exactly as it is, like, just, you know, and no introduction, no, hi, I'm Mark Eiglar. She just launches right into like, you play the shit out of the violin. I'm like, I don't know, man. What a hero. What a role model. Like, just a really cool person. So yeah, he is, right? And took the time. You know? It's incredible. So, and I did ask him about the civil case, and he's not representing him for the civil case because he's not a civil attorney. That makes sense. So, because I've been trying to keep up with that, but it's hard to find stuff on the internet about it because all that it does is it pops right over to the criminal case. But the civil case has not had civil trial's not happened yet. He's got some other attorney, civil attorney for that. But he said that Scott Peterson texts him all the time. He said actually just this morning he got a text from Scott Peterson that was like, I owe you my life. And then Mark is like, his response is like, what he really wanted is to give him back his name, and he wasn't able to do it. And I think it's hard, man. It's like, I think part of it is he still feels a little bit of like he didn't achieve all he wanted to achieve. Like what he really wanted to achieve was he wanted, I forget the sheriff's name, but the sheriff that was responsible for a lot of the mistakes and stuff, and who was the one who came up with the story in the media, that sheriff, he really wanted that sheriff to be held accountable, and he really wanted Scott to get his name back. And those two things didn't happen. And that's what he really wanted out of it. And like, I totally get it. I would be the same way. But like, from an objective third party perspective, it's like, I know that that's not what a criminal trial is for, right? That's really more along the lines of the civil avenue. And like, criminal is like the guilt of the defendant or not guilt of the defendant. And of course he knows that too, but in other words, he wanted to not just like save the world. And by that, I mean, he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he wasn't just trying to be single-handedly have somebody acquitted when this was like the most impossible case to try, even if you had help, right? Because of the PR. Everybody knows. I mean, we discussed this during the video of the difficulty here, because there's just, everyone has an automatic gut reaction when they learn, oh, it's related to the Parkland shooting. You know, it's already impossible, but like he wanted to go even further than that, to like hold the sheriff accountable and like restore Scott's name. And it's kind of like with Karen Reed, right? Like I have no doubt, I know other people can say whatever, I have no doubt she's going to be acquitted. Like that's given to me. But that's the job of the jury, right? The job of the jury is not to say who else did it, or who, you know, who else is responsible, who else made mistakes. And it's not the job of the jury to then do anything after the fact that, you know what I mean? So like she could be acquitted of all charges, but that doesn't mean that after that happens and he's going to become the Alberts or Proctor or Higgins or anybody. And it doesn't mean that there's still not going to be people out there who will never give Karen Reed a job, who will never let her rent a house or, you know, get a loan on a car or whatever it is, you know, like there will always be people out there. This is true with everybody, right? There will always be people out there who think the person did it. And like, it's akin to this, where it's like if Jackson and Yannetti, you know, they're going for this not guilty verdict, but like, let's just imagine that in their case, they also simultaneously in this same trial wanted to bring, let's say, the Alberts or Trooper Proctor or whoever, you know, to justice, which we'll learn more about that during their case in chief. And also to like clear her name to where she could go back to her normal life the way it was before, like without this ever happening. Like that's what he wanted for Scott Peterson. And I understand it completely. I would have been the same way. You know, but I just the thing is that it's hard. It's hard because it's not possible. Maybe with a civil trial. I mean, take Johnny Depp, for example, like Debbie Heard, right? Take that, for example. Like, you know, everybody knows that the reason that Depp went through with all that, right? And he's not the only one, but it's just an example, right? And like it's like he lost money by doing that trial. Like there's no way around it. Like he lost money. You know, it's like, but that was all in an attempt to restore his name. And while a ton of people, I'm sure, went from assuming or believing Amber Heard, you know, especially because she was monopolizing and capitalizing on the Me Too movement, which is disgusting. There's always going to be people out there who think he did certain things or just didn't see the trial or whatever the case may be. In other words, it sucks, but the truth is like you can never fully restore the name, even if you're completely innocent of something. And that's tough. That's really tough. But what Johnny Depp did is maybe about as good as you can have, you know, like you can't reach every single person in the entire planet, but like, you know, that trial got a ton of press coverage. I think to the date, it's like the most televised trial of all time and stuff. Like it put a lot of law tubers on the map. You know, Runkle came all the way from Canada to go there. And so that trial had so much coverage, and he's a celebrity, add to the fact he's a celebrity, and add to the fact that no matter what Amber said about him, none of that biased people against him as much as what people were saying about Scott Peterson. Like Johnny Depp didn't have nearly as much of an uphill battle, but he had the celebrity on his side. He had the large amount of media coverage on his side, and still couldn't. He'll never restore his name back to where it was. So, in other words, it's like an impossible task that Mark Aguilar's was hoping for, and I totally get it. It was like the impossible. He was hoping for the impossible. And then when he can't achieve all of that, as in the impossible, restoring Scott's name, you know, and to where it was before, as if nothing had ever happened, and holding the sheriff accountable, I think that's part of why it's challenging for him, and he has a hard time watching it because he feels maybe in some way like he felt. He didn't say this. This is my intuition, and also I feel like I understand kind of the way his brain works a little bit here. And there's a lot of overlaps with music. And so I think that there's an element of like, he feels like maybe the thing is, he didn't let Scott down. Scott's like, you saved my life. This is where he might feel like he let himself down. And that's like tough when it's like, but like, again, it's like he let himself down, but it was because of standards that he was hoping for somebody else. So I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. It's like, it's hard to explain, but I really get it. Because there's so many similarities with music and how that goes. Especially it's like, there's like the overachiever mindset and being like kind of a perfectionist. And again, that's very violent-y. So in my, like, to me, it's like, how could you ever not be anything more than ecstatic with that trial? Like, because he did such an amazing job, but at the same time, like, well, I totally get it. Like, but I don't know, just what an amazing person and what a great job he did. But I mean, everything that I heard from him on the phone was like exactly what tracked with like what, like never would I've ever expected to ever obviously hear from him, but like all of it was like what I would have imagined if someone was like, here's $1 million. Pretend that like you could imagine talking to Mark Iglarsh on the phone and like what he would be like and like in other words, what I'm saying is like it was true to exactly what we saw from him in trial. It was like real. That's a real deal, like a genuine person. Like and if you watch him on like Peter's show when he was on there, same thing. It's like so consistent with his energy and his philosophies on everything. Everything was like exactly as I expected it to be in terms of, again, never expecting to talk to him, but just consistent. And so I don't know. That's just great. It was like I'll just never forget that for my whole life. Yeah, Balquiller says a handicap on what you personally wish to achieve. Yep. And he might be. And if he's watching right now, Mark, dude, I love you. And I'm not the only one. Like Super Planner Girl says she was there and that opening statement made her cry. There's people in the chat who may not have been there that night, but might have watched the replay crew. But like he may never see another video of mine again, and that's fine too. Just he's making the world a better place. He's making the world a better place, Yes, Blackwater says we love you, Mark. Yep. He's making the world a better place and he's doing the good work. Like that's what he's doing the good work. He's doing the good work, he's doing the hard work. And I know that attorneys in general people talk a lot of shit, and especially defense attorneys. And I will tell you what, his opening statements, Mark's opening statements there really were a turning point for me. And I think for a lot of people, because we don't often get to see defense attorneys in this capacity where they really have somebody who's sitting there who they really believe is innocent and they're really fighting in a very specific way. It's like you have to have all these elements that are there. You have to have facts that show that your client is innocent. Okay. First of all, second of all, you have to have a lot of talent as an attorney, right? Strategy, all of that, right? A trial experience, right? As well. And you also have to have a lot of passion because going into it, you have an uphill battle because even though every client has the presumption of innocence, we all know that really it's kind of the opposite. Most people, are going to sit there and assume that the person's guilty because who would want to live in a country or a state or wherever if you really think about the presumption of innocence and you really think about that, it's like saying to yourself that you have to assume that the government has the wrong person. And that's really a terrifying prospect because it means that A, they have the wrong person, B, the real person's still out there. So the government has to be careful with that because it's like, you can't have a citizenry that's like up in an outrage and terrified in a panic. So it's like they're telling everybody to believe the presumption of innocence, but at the same time, they're like, don't believe it. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy, but that's how it is. because they, at the same time, they want to convince you that they have the right person before it goes to trial, right? They have to convince you they have the right person. They have to convince you that you're safe. You can leave your houses. You can drive your car. You can go to the grocery store. You can go to work. So the only way to do that is to make it seem like they have the right person. But yet there's the presumption of innocence. So it's kind of an oxymoron from the get-go, right? But you have all of those challenges, right? And you have to have like these things in your favor in terms of the facts, but then the rest of that comes from the attorney, right? The talent, the passion, the strategy, the ability, the experience. And it's a rare occasion when when all those things line up. And we're seeing it right now again with the Karen Reed trial. And like that's why I keep saying, like, that's why I'm so grateful, because I didn't think I would get to see it again after Mark in my lifetime, you know? And here we are. Like, it's horrible for Karen, and it's horrible for Scott Peterson, and it's horrible for people that are wrongfully accused. And, but they're very lucky to have such great defense attorneys, and we are very lucky to get to see justice and what it looks like. Yeah. Thank you, Super Planner Girl. Super Planner Girl says, Mark, thank you for what you do. If you ever see this, we're grateful. Yeah. Black Widow says a wonderful professional and personal standard. Yes. And I don't think he's watching the Karen Reed trial, and I hope he's not, because God forbid, speaking of the opposite, right? God forbid he sees Trooper Proctor. I was actually talking to my mom about this today, because like, she had called me after I got done live streaming yesterday. It was a long day. She had called me several times just to talk about my niece's birthday party this weekend. And, you know, I didn't answer the phone, and like, my mind was shot, y'all, after yesterday. Like, my mind was shot. And, it's like I still feel like I'm in like a fog or something from that. Like, that was crazy. There was so much. There was like so much. And, but she actually saw some of it. She wasn't in the chat. Like, she didn't type in the chat, but she was actually watching some of it, you know? And so we were just talking about that, and like, you know, just how, you know, one of the things that she took away from it was like, she had so much compassion for Karen, like what it must be like for her to sit there and hear this. And I was like, I know, like, but also just how scary it is. Like, how scary. But God forbid people who operate from the utmost of integrity, somebody like Mark, you know, and my dad was like that too. And like, you almost hope that they could be spared from ever seeing something like Trooper Proctor on the stand, because it's disgusting. And you don't want people to lose faith in humanity. You know, the people that still have faith in humanity, you don't want them to lose faith, you know, because we need people to have faith in humanity, like, or else the whole world will fall apart. Like, we need people to still have faith. And unfortunately, perhaps for that to happen, there's people that are bad enough, like Trooper Proctor, that for the people who still have faith, they need to just stay 100 miles away from that. Just because otherwise it'll all go to shit, if that makes sense. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. It was rough. And I went through and did timestamps today, and it took me like hours. I just keep pausing, because every single sentence out of that man's mouth is worse than the previous sentence. And there's, as much as I heard at the time yesterday, there's still so much that I missed, because one sentence can have like 10 fucked up things in it. And he kind of sneaks them in. He talks pretty fast. He kind of sneaks certain things in. And so does Lolly in his questioning with him. And it's like, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is that if you really want to catch every single thing, it's going to take multiple listens through. And like, nobody should have to endure that. It's bad enough one time. No one should have to endure it. But like, even doing the timestamps, he would go so fast that another thing will come out. I had to keep rewinding the same section like 100 times just to get the timestamp typed fast enough. And I'm a fast typer. Oh my God. Like, there's some sections in there that were brutal. Like, I had to keep rewinding them. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, ugh. So
Luckily, though, on the bright side, now that we're into cross-examination territory, tomorrow there will probably be a lot of tough things, but it'll be different because he's going to be obliterated and massacred, and as he should, because Jackson's fighting for this like all hell, and you can tell it's incredible. This is another one of those things, man, where you can see the passion, and it's not just for Karen, it's for Yannetti, because he was shit talking Yannetti. Trooper Proctor was, and he's like, no. And I will also say, to that end, I think it was a really smart move for Yannetti to bring in counsel from another state. I always thought from the beginning, even when I knew nothing about the case, I had a feeling that was a good idea anyway, just because I did know that like people are really opinionated about it, and it's a small community, and it's a high profile case with a lot of media attention. And it's like, well, in that situation, bringing in somebody who's not from there is a pretty good idea. It was really smart. It was smart that Yannetti did the opening statements, right? Because they needed somebody who's from there, right? I think that was really smart. And Yannetti did a phenomenal job. No one could have done it better, right? And Yannetti kind of started out with most of the cross-examinations. And I think they waited for the jury. This is just speculation or opinion, but I think they waited for a little bit, for a couple of days, for the jury to settle in to seeing that the defense knew what they were doing and that they weren't just making empty promises. And then they brought in Jackson on cross, because I remember it was like not right off the bat, right? And it was like when they already had established enough trust, I think, within the jury to where people would listen to him because he's from California. And he did a phenomenal job, and now they trust him implicitly as well. So, oh, I missed this part. I didn't get to hear all of it, unfortunately. But Serial Planner Girl says, I know you don't like animal harm, Chelsea, but I did like when Runkle said on STS it will be like a cat playing with its prey. Yeah, I didn't get to hear that part, but I love Runkle. I freaking love Runkle. That's why it was so crazy. I was like, I didn't know Runkle was going to be on STS. So when I saw that, I was like, this is like, what day is this? Like, yeah, it is a good visual. Yeah. Yeah. Jackson is so spicy and I love him. Yeah, for sure. Oh, his face, man, his skin was a different color of red, and not red, obviously, like not embarrassment or whatever. Like we see people on the stand, obviously, but like he was like, actually, I think I pointed it out even when it was on direct examination. There was a time where I did point out yesterday during the live stream. I was like, oh, the camera panned around. And I was like, y'all, look at Jackson's skin color. It's a different color. And then that even just got even more so when he got up there to start questioning him. He's fucking pissed, man. Like, and he should be. Like, and Judge Bev, like, it's funny because Judge Bev was really different with this. And it also, how we had the idea, actually, I think it was, who was it? Was it Fender? Somebody yesterday had the idea. They were like, was he also talking to Judge Bev? Like when he said CUNT, the way he says it. And when we went back and watched it, I was like, oh my God. But when I was doing the timestamps and watching it again, I realized that's not the only time. He actually, if you pay attention to it, which I know it's hard because there's so much, but like, there's quite a few times where he is making these snidey comments or whatever that are meant to be directed towards Karen or towards the medical examiner or some other female, where you can tell it's like, holy shit, that's to the judge as well. And she must pick up on that. And I think she hates him. Just saying. That's just a personal opinion. Yeah. Flaming hot mad red. Yep. So, at some point we need to talk about the Young Thug attorney, but we'll save that for another day. Because he's going to have to get added to my list of hero attorneys. But I have to say something that in terms of defense attorneys, okay, if I were to say for people who are not who are prosecutors, Creighton is like a hero attorney of mine. And I just have to say, I don't give a shit what anybody says. Like, I love the Lounge Lizard, and I
I dare anybody to try to do a job like he did with cross-examining out Murdaugh was the challenge of 10 trillion lifetimes, and he made it look easy. And he followed Alex down every rabbit hole. And normally you wouldn't always do that with a witness, right? You would try to keep them on track. Creighton knows that mind, Alex's mind, inside and out. And every time he did it, it was the right choice. He followed him because he knew Alex would just dig his own grave. I mean, it was so fucking masterful. It was so masterful. I'll never, ever, ever like get over how incredible that cross was. I mean, Creighton did great on everything, but like the big thing that sticks out in terms of just beyond, it's like that cross-examination of Alex. I mean, that was the challenge. Like, no, like, I don't even know. Like, that's insane. But when it comes to like defense attorneys, like, I just have to say, like, Mark was the first, in terms of like a hero defense attorney, Mark Eilarch was the first person on that who made that list. And since then, you know, like I said, like I can add like Jackson and Yannetti and Taylor. And I think his first name is Brian, but Mr. Steele from the Young Thug RICO trial. I would say that, but again, Mark was the first person, and you know, he really paved the way for me and for other people for recognizing like, here's what a really great defense attorney looks like, and here's what it looks like when a client is really innocent, and here's what it looks like. You know, here's the real deal fighting for justice. And it's crazy too, because we don't always even see that from the prosecution, like from a prosecution. Great example is the Karen Reed trial, but that's not the only one. I mean, even when it comes to the Scott Peterson trial, the prosecution was so underwhelming. And it's like, so what I can say is this, it's like, it wasn't even just the first time being really impressed by a defense attorney, but like, it was a really memorable time where seeing any attorney from any party, Civil War criminal from whatever, really fight like that with all their heart. And now you know what it looks like. And then, you know, and then it's actually, then you realize all the times people aren't doing it, which is a whole other thing. Anyway, I could go on and on. But yeah, it's about Trooper Proctor. He's just a major woman hater, and that oozes from every pore. Yes, accurate. Okay, so let's jump into the recap. We may not get through all of it because it's really long, because I added on, and we do need to save some mental energy for tomorrow. But I exported this video file yesterday because of, shout out to DSN, reminding me that today is Disaster Tuesday. However, it was not a disaster because DSN reminded me, and therefore I exported my video file a day early. So here we are. We have it.
It's a house.
All right,
Does this feel like 1,000 trillion bazillion years ago? It does.
Ms. Delaney, whenever you're ready.
It was not that long ago, though.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
My name is Ashley Vallier, spelled Vallier.
And Ms. Vallier, what do you do for work?
I'm a forensic scientist at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
How long have you been employed at the State Police Crime Lab?
Just over 5 years.
Now, within the trace unit, can you describe to the jury sort of what types of things you're looking at, or what types of analysis that you do with regard to working in the trace unit specifically?
What I do or what the unit does?
First, as far as in general terms,
Oh,
what
all
is the
the
unit?
units.
The unit has a lot of disciplines. So there's fire debris examination, explosives examination.
I really do love this witness. It's like, how can I explain this to you? Because clearly you're so dumb. I mean, that's not even the attitude that they're taking. That's the attitude that's what I'm imagining in my mind, because Wally's so dumb.
Serial number restoration, gunshot residue analysis, fibers, paint, glass, physical match.
Do y'all remember, oh fuck, what's his name? From the Murdaugh trial, the gunshot, residue expert dude, the one who was so pleasant and delightful. Oh, fuck, what was his name? I'll think of it when I'm not trying to. But do you guys remember how wonderful he was? He was just so delightful. Loved it.
Trace recovery.
And specific to yourself, what is it that you do within the trace?
I do gunshot residue analysis, trace recovery, and physical match analysis.
And as far as each of those respective categories, is those the things that you've done essentially your time there, especially as a forensic scientist too?
Yes.
Now, with regard to, as far as
Love the hair.
the
Love
physical
it.
match component that you were talking about, can you explain to the jury, just again in general terms, sort of what goes into that, or what are you looking at, what are you doing in regard to your analysis with that?
Physical match analysis is looking at 2 or more items that have broken or irregular edges, and seeing if they fit together like a sort of like a jigsaw puzzle.
Shout out to
And-
Dan Rouchbaum.
As far as your work within the trace unit, how is it
Hey, who will never
that
watch
you
this
came
live
to be
stream,
involved,
but
or what
you never
piece
know.
of analysis did you become initially involved in with respect to Ms. Reed's case?
I was assigned to do physical match analysis on, well, many different items.
And what types of items were they specifically that you had received?
So it was many pieces of apparent plastic and apparent glass and 1 drinking straw.
Thanks, Blair. What's up on the screen is photograph 1905, which is now.
You know,
marked
I have
as
to say
Exhibit
something real quick.
262. Do you recognize that?
And I don't think that anyone's even brought this up, and I just now thought of it. Just now dawned on me with the drink. It's like, why did the drinking straw always hit me as odd? And I never had the time to stop and really think about it, because it's like it's like on to the next thing, right? Next stupid lolly question. But like, you know, I don't recall in any of the footage or any of the testimony from anybody there being a straw. And the other thing is that in the pictures, which I guess we haven't seen yet, but we'll see with the straw, something struck me as odd. But again, I didn't have time to go to like sit there and let my gut instinct like think about that. Like, the straw that's in the picture is not the same type of straw. Like, as someone who worked in restaurants for a lot of years, the straw that's in the picture is the straw that you would get in a water glass. It's a pint straw. So it's tall, it's thick. It's not a mixed drink or cocktail straw. In other words, the straw that, like the one that we see in the picture, is the type of straw that if you were to stick that in like a bar glass, like a short glass, you know, which is what she would have had, it would actually fall out of the glass or look really funny. So it wouldn't have struck me as odd if it was the right size straw, but it's the wrong size straw. And we don't hear anybody talk about straw. So the other thing, for all we know, that straw could be from literally anywhere too, right? Like, that's the other thing. They find all these different things, and it's like, that straw could have been from literally anybody at any point in time. And they don't ever test it for DNA to see that she drank out off of it. You know what I mean? It's like, there's literally nothing that connects it to her. It's like in any other trial that would have been DNA tested, and if it didn't have her DNA on it, it would be thrown out. Only in this trial, though, right? It's like, let's just work off of wild assumptions. When by we, I mean the Commonwealth. I know.
I do.
And is that the evidence back that you were presented with regard to items labeled as 7-5?
That's the seal on it. Yes.
I know. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I'm like, man, I wonder how good she is at like regular puzzles. Does she ever do regular?
Recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 263.
I do.
Is that one of the pieces that you
Right.
had from item 7-5?
Those are the 3 pieces in item 7-5.
And so the 3 pieces from that were all red, apparent plastic pieces from that same item. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Vallier, what's up on the screen, and that's photograph 1921, exhibit 271. That is the evidence bag
Oh, I have
box
a
that
question.
contains.
I'm glad I remembered this. I have a quick question regarding Trooper Proctor. Do y'all know what the fuck the smoke thing is? Do you guys remember that from the testimony? In the text messages, there were a number of times. It was like many times where there would be a response to something and it would just be like smoke. And the way he read it, it didn't make any sense. It was like smoke, blah, blah, blah. And then he would ramble on into the next thing. And it's like, what? Smoke? What is he talking about? Did you guys have any idea what the hell that is? Is that a newfangled thing the kids are saying? And like, I just don't know about it. Okay. That's what I thought initially. Zero Planet Girl says slang for hot, I think. That's what I thought initially. But you know what, though? I was actually listening to it again today, doing the timestamps, and I had another thought. I thought to myself, what if it's the fire emoji? Because that would actually make a lot more sense, I think. It could be the word. But I'm wondering if it's the fire emoji and he's calling it smoke instead of fire, so people will be confused. Because everybody knows it's the fire emoji, and everyone knows what the fire emoji means, but the smoke is like, what? And I think that perhaps people, like maybe like what I did, it was assumed, oh, well, that must just be a local thing, or it's just something I don't get, and like whatever, it's not all that important. Everybody knows the fire emoji. Yes, exactly. Everybody knows the context of that emoji. And I'm wondering if that's when he says smoke. That's not a smoke emoji, that's fire. But I think he's calling it smoke. And I wonder, furthermore, I was thinking this. Remember how many times the defense objected? And like, for example, there was the objection with see you next Tuesday because he didn't say the word, he just spelled it out. I'm wondering if some of those objections were when he was saying smoke. And I think they might have been. And, I wonder if he'll bring it up tomorrow. But I wonder if that's part of it, because we know with all the other witnesses, they have to say the emoji accurately, like smiley face, winky face, sad face, whatever. And that emoji is fire, and he's calling it smoke, which is really funny because then, of course, if you want to really read into it, you can be like, oh, smoke and mirrors or whatever. But like, anyway, right, it's misleading. Yep. You probably said that before I said that, but I'm just now saying it. Maybe that's what they're objecting to. Yep. For misrepresenting the text. So you must have said that before I said it. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yep. Because as far as there was only one word that was something where he spelled it out instead of saying it, but there were a lot of objections during those texts for things that were not accurate. And at one point, he even said something like, we have to have something being accurate. And that was before the see you next Tuesday. But I think it might have been because of the smoke, because it's not smoke, it's fire. Yep. Yeah. That's a good point. TSN says, because no one knew who sent which text, him or his buddy. Yeah. Also, I couldn't figure out for the life of me. I tried to find it online. I don't know how to spell Trooper. What is it? What is it? Tasichik? The dude he's texting a lot of the time. I can't find his name anywhere on the internet. I tried every creative spelling I could think of for that word when I was listening to him say it, Lolly say it, whoever say it. I cannot find that name. So in the timestamps, I just put his trooper friend. I couldn't, because I don't know how to spell that name. So if anyone knows how to spell that name, please let me know.
The items in reference to lab item 7-6.
That's a brilliant idea.
Correct.
Yeah, beautiful.
Now, it's up on the screen that's now been marked as exhibit 272. These were the items that were marked within that box or that bag of item 7-6. Is that correct?
Correct.
It appears 2 pieces of clear plastic, correct?
Apparent plastic, yes.
Now, what's contained in this exhibit up on the screen, number 279, do you recognize that as the contents that were collectively sort of labeled as item 7-8?
I do.
And next, what's depicted up on the screen within this exhibit of 282, do you recognize that?
I do.
Is that one of the pieces that was submitted within this as far as 7-8 that you examined throughout the course of your analysis here, correct?
It was. There's actually two pieces in that. There's the large one in the middle, and there's a very small one up in the corner.
And again, what's up on the screen is that the item that was contained within that evidence.
Yes.
Next layer, now what's been depicted up on the screen and been marked as Exhibit 297. Ms. Gilman, if you could zoom in just a little bit on items of evidence, please. Now, contained within this are three clear pieces of glass or plastic, if you know.
I'd have to look at my notes to see what I wrote them as.
My other question, Your Honor, with the court's permission, may
Yes. Go ahead, look at your notes.
Three pieces of apparent plastic.
the item that's contained above those three pieces of apparent clear plastic, what is that?
That is item 7-19. That is a black straw.
There's the straw. Wait, let me go back to that. Hold on.
And again, Ms. Blair, what's depicted up on the court's permission, may
Yes. Go ahead, look at your notes.
Three pieces of apparent plastic.
the item
Yeah. I don't know, man. It looks a little bit too long and thick. What do you guys think?
that's contained above those three pieces of apparent clear plastic, what is that?
That is item 7-19. That is a black straw.
And again, Ms. Blair, what's depicted up on the screen on Exhibit 311, is that the items, or the piece
Like, I love how they didn't put the ruler to give it scale for that. However, if you've worked a lot with straws, like in restaurants and stuff, you can kind of tell from the thickness of the plastic. Because like when it's a bar straw, the thickness is really thin. Okay, it's like a skinny plastic, like it's more flimsy. You can kind of tell. Like, so for even though they don't give us a ruler or anything for scale in that picture, look, I can kind of tell by looking at it that it's thick on the thicker side. And that's what I'm like, happy you're here, Oksana. We missed you.
pieces of plastic that were contained within the aforementioned evidence bag and previous exhibit, item 7-11.
Yes.
That's the bag that contained item 7-14, is that correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I can have photograph 2012. And again, Ms. Blair, what's up on the screen is that the item that was contained and labeled as item 7-14 within that.
I'm sorry, I need all, please.
What's depicted on the screen is that
Wally.
a fair and accurate
Wally.
was contained
Speak
in
up,
the
Wally.
kit bag from the previous exhibits, labeled as item 7-14.
Yes.
The Wally bird.
Ms. Blair, directing your attention
Why
to the
is
screen,
that
what's now
Wally?
marked as exhibit 329. Those are the items that were labeled
Look at him.
collectively as 7-12. That were
Sorry,
contained
guys.
within that.
Sorry, it's just like, I believe I can fly. I believe I can tell a lie. I squawk about it every night and day. Lift my wings and fly away. Oh my God. I'll get too carried away if I keep going down that road.
Prior exhibit.
Yes.
And Ms. Blair, directing your attention.
That is so funny. We were just talking about this. No DNA on the straw. That's right. Oksana, that's hilarious. We were just talking about this. Oksana is saying it's just garbage they found. Yep, that's exactly right. I was literally probably 5 minutes ago, I was actually saying that. I was like, that could just be a random ass straw because like nobody saw her with a straw. There was no comments about a straw. We don't see a straw in the videos, and it doesn't seem like the right size straw. And literally, it's just a random ass straw. And they did
To
not.
the screen, those are the items contained within that exhibit bag from prior exhibits that have been collectively labeled by the lab as 7-13.
Yes.
Again, Ms.
Yes, you
Blair,
can.
what's up on the screen are those the items that were collectively.
What are we looking at
identified by the
here?
lab as-
DSN? Is that salaries? Who's fanning? Is that how much they make a year? There's no way. What? Oh, you're looking for the names for me. Thank you. Kukovsky. DeChico. Okay, DeChico. That must be the name that I was looking for. Thank you, DeChico. The way that they say it, it sounds like DeChico. It's like, because I was thinking it was spelled like the way that I was searching for it was like Tachiko type thing, Tachiko. That's how they pronounce it. That must be that name. This one that starts with a D. It looks like Dichico. Dichico. I'm gonna kick your ass. Yeah, that's insane though. Wow. What? So, but Fanning makes the most. We haven't heard from him. We've not heard a peep, right? I don't know that name at all. I know all the other names, obviously. Was he in the text group? That is bananas. It's also so funny that his nickname was Chip. Yeah. Yeah, so what's funny, yeah, the way they pronounce I feel like the way they said it was Kudkowski or something, but now I can't remember now that I'm trying to remember it. Anyway, it looks like a Polish name. But what's funny is that the D last name, the way they pronounce that is not at all like what it looks like. It sounds like they say DeChico or Tachiko, but that's not. Yeah, it's insane. Oh, he was. Okay, thank you, Candace. Right, I know, that was hilarious. I think part of that was like honestly a dig at Buchanan because of the whole struggle with the little battle about the name thing and how Buchanan corrected him but didn't correct anybody else, and they went back and forth. I'm wondering. So now he's like, I think it was like being sarcastic of like, I'm gonna really make sure I pronounce these correctly. I think that's where that came from, because I also think he pronounced it correctly. I think he just wanted to take that opportunity, which makes sense. That's what I thought too, Blackwater. You know, fuck me. The thing is that it's going to vary by jurisdiction and by state and by city. I think most cops are underpaid more than likely. But it seems like there's a lot of anomalies in this area. Remember with Michelle Troconis, I remember hearing during that trial, I remember hearing that the cops in that city that it escapes me at the moment, but in Connecticut, that those are the cops that live there, their salary is the highest in the country of any cop. I remember hearing that. And so I'm wondering if like it's just maybe that whole region, like the New England region, maybe DSN knows because of New England, but here's the thing, like who was saying this? It was Lori, somebody was saying this, like I think it was Lori, like a lot of this comes from your elected officials, right? Your elected officials, that's who's in charge. That's how you end up with your DA. And then that's how you end up with your chief of police. And that's how you end up with like, for example, I love taking freaking surveys. Some of you guys might know this. I may have said this before on a live stream. I love taking surveys. Give me a survey, I'll take it. I don't care what it's about. But recently there's a lot of surveys that pop up that are like related to, I guess, politics really, but it's more like because they're trying to get information for election. So like if y'all ever hear things on the news and it's like statistics like so such and such percentage of people vote for whoever or they believe in what such thing, that's because there's people that like me that take these surveys and fill them out. and so anyway, but they ask a lot about policing and they're like trying to get your views. Like for example, the recent surveys I've taken are like, how safe do you feel in your neighborhood? Do you feel like you can talk to your local police? Do you feel like you can trust your local police? Do you feel like people, your local police are biased and they ask all these specific questions and the answers to the surveys go to the local people. There's a better word for that. To the local government, and that's who gets that information. And so Anyway, like, in other words, things like the salaries of law enforcement, think about like when everybody was talking about like defunding the police, for example, right? All of that is done on a local, like, government basis. It's not a nation. It's not like the federal government can have a say in that. So I wonder if, like, in general, I think it's probably still true that most cops don't make money. Like, it's like being a school teacher, right? Like, it's just there's certain people that are underpaid. But I wonder if there's an anomaly in that region, and that could maybe also explain some of this behavior that we see. What is lineman, Oksana? Oh, that's a good point. State police, right? Well, yeah, but then the state legislature, yeah. So still, though, that would still come. There's still people who are like that. Those numbers can change, right? Like, someone could have a policy where they need to make budget cuts, and one of the things they cut is the salaries of the state troopers. But thank you for clarifying that it's the state police. Yes. Right, I know. And it's funny because if anything, it seems to have the opposite effect. Like the NYPD, I have learned so much about the NYPD from different things. And I will tell you, like, I have so much respect for the NYPD. Every NYPD, either current or retired officer that I've heard from, who's come out and talked on any podcast or show or documentary or what have you, all of them, honestly, the utmost of freaking examples of the pillar of what being a police officer should be. That it's really interesting. And I think part of that is because of this. Because I have to wonder if their salaries are crap. Because I think that part of it is like they're going to be treated like crap. Day in, day out. That is like the hardest policing job you can have. And also, from everything I understand, they're underpaid, for what they do. And so the people that do it, to go through that, where it's like terrible conditions, it's challenging, it's dangerous, and they're underpaid, and it's like long hours, it's like all the hard things and not enough monetary compensation. They're doing it. Here's the clincher, right? They're doing it because they want to, because they believe in it, because they want to serve. And if they could do it for free, they would, type of thing, right? And I wonder if that makes the difference. And then when you've got police officers, troopers, who are making these enormous salaries that are like more than attorneys, doctors, probably. I mean, it's like, it's interesting, right? Because like what she said, what Oksana said makes sense initially, right? Like, wouldn't it motivate them to do their jobs correctly? But I also wonder if it attracts people who maybe don't have the integrity, the values, the personal, what's the right word? Wherewithal, the character, right? There might be people who just do it for the money. And then there are also people who do that might also be willing to take bribes, right? To cut corners, that type of thing. Good night, Black Widow. See you tomorrow. Overtime and working construction traffic. Huh. Working construction traffic. I don't know what the like significance of that is, but I don't know much about things. Fortitude, yes, thank you. So yeah, but it does make me wonder if that's part of it, right? Because like you look at somebody like Trooper Proctor, he doesn't even behave on the stand like law enforcement. I've never seen law enforcement ever. Have you guys? His demeanor is completely different. Never mind. Take away even the text. Let's take away before we get to the text, right? Just look at his demeanor on the stand. It's just completely different. I've never seen law enforcement like that. You would not know he's a cop or in law enforcement. I guess, I don't know. If you're a state trooper, do you count as a cop? I don't even know how that works. I mean, I know cop is short for copper. And copper was a term, an old term for the badge. I guess state troopers would have that. Anyway. Okay, good night, Super Planner Girl. See you tomorrow morning for the trial. We are back in action. My brain is still fried from yesterday. So maybe it'll recover before that.
15 from that evidence bag contained in the prior.
Yes.
Now, thanks, Vallier. As far as your analysis was concerned with regard to each of these items, and we'll get to that a little bit, I think, the next time. But with regard to the labels that you assigned to them as far as letters of the alphabet, A through whatever letter that you went, when you were conducting your sort of physical match analysis, how was that shown on a particular piece, or did you label those pieces, or how were you able to sort of quantify that?
The pieces that were large enough to, I printed out labels from a label maker with the lab number, the item number, and then the piece that the letter that I assigned it, so ABC, and my initials, and those are on the pieces.
And then as far as those pieces were concerned, if you were able to find some consistency between, say, piece A and piece B, and you were able to sort of fit them together, what, if anything, did you do to memorialize that sort of physical map?
Within the same item, if there were two pieces that fit together.
I see. So what you're saying, DSN, is a lot of this is because of the overtime. Interesting. I see. Okay. Salaries plus overtime. So we don't know what their base salary is. Okay. I see what you're saying, though. The overtime. Okay. Interesting. The ex-sheriff of LA County. Interesting. I don't remember who that is. Do you remember his name? I might know the name. Interesting, though. He must be a stand-up guy, right? If he has anything in common with Drew Proctor. Ha 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 ha.
I documented that with photos, wrote it down in my notes, and then if it was within the same item, I held it together with tape, and then repackaged it still together as a single piece.
And as far as these consistencies or the matches that you were examining or looking for, was that solely within piece to piece, or at some point did you also look at sort of a larger piece as far as a housing unit for a taillight?
For this case?
Yes.
Yes.
And with regard to pieces that you had sort of put together, what, if anything, were you able to do with regard to some of those pieces and the taillight housing, item 3-1?
From those items that we just saw, I was able to piece one larger piece with many of those pieces all fit together into one piece that I then called piece 1. There were some other pieces that also fit together among those question ones that I called pieces 2, piece 3, piece 4, and piece 5. Piece 1 was a physical match with item 3-1, the taillight.
So on to the next day, people.
Yeah.
Mr. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen as that photograph, which has now been marked as Exhibit 332?
Yes.
Is that one of the items from 7-16 next to the ruler with the measurements corresponding to that item?
Yes.
Mr. Vallier, as far as this particular item is concerned, with reference to sort of the texture of that particular piece of plastic, what, if anything, did you note or observe in reference to that?
Oh my God, Lolly, with reference
I'm
to
sorry, the texture?
Lolly had.
I'm sorry, do you have the laser pointer in front of you? Or no?
Oh.
Good night.
Yep.
Good night, PSN. I get it. I know, fading. I get it. We'll see you tomorrow for the dismantling. Indeed. Alex Villanueva, though, rings a bell. Wow. Do you know any cases he was involved with? The name does ring a bell.
Yes.
Now, as far as the surface area of that particular piece of plastic, how would you describe that?
I mean, they're
funny, like looking at it, if y'all saw my taillight video, or if you have taillights and look at taillights, it's really obvious that these little pieces, you can tell exactly where they're from in a taillight, right? Like
little dots on it. They're not
the little
just like dimples of a sort.
Stippling or dimples of some sort on a piece of plastic.
Yes.
And as far as those stipplings or dimples on the piece of plastic, were those flush with the rest of the plastic? Were they raised a little bit? How were they sort of configured?
I don't recall.
again, Ms. Blair, what's up on the screen has now been marked as Exhibit 371. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And that is another piece next to a ruler, essentially memorializing its measurements from item 7-16. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And again, Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's depicted up on the screen?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
A photo I took of item 7-16.
And in particular, one of the...
Can you speak up a little, sir, and a little
Yes.
slower? Thank you.
In particular, one of the red plastic pieces from item 7-16, is that correct?
Yes.
And again, Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 378?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
One of the photos that I took of item 7-16.
And what do you recognize that to be?
It's one of the photos that I took of item 7-16.
And this particular item up here as Exhibit 380, you describe sort of color, shape, what you observed from this particular item?
That's a piece of red and clear apparent plastic.
A piece of red plastic with a piece of clear plastic sort of within the same piece, is that fair to say?
Within the same piece?
Yes.
Apparent plastic, yes.
Ms. Vallier, if you could explain to the jury again sort of the process that you undertook as far as these various pieces from these various evidence item numbers. What was the process that you undertook as far as doing your comparison?
So first of all, everything is documented. Each item is documented separately with photographs, notes. I put a label with the case number, item number, and then A, B, C, etc. If there are multiple pieces in it, a little label on each piece. I look at the photos to see if there are any similarities, dissimilarities, to see if there are any potential pieces to compare. And then if I do think that there are pieces that could be compared, I'll open those items and keep them all separate, and then look at them in real time to see if it does actually look like they could be consistent before I bring them close together. And if it still looks like they could be consistent, then I'll bring them together to see if there is an actual mechanical fit, and then I'll document that and look at it under the stereo zoom.
Now, with reference to those pieces, once you did those inspection from or analysis from the individual items, what, if anything, did you do with those individual items with reference to the taillight housing?
So before even comparing it to the taillight, I compared all of the questioned items to each other. So that's the 7-5 to 7-19, to see if any of those pieces would fit together. And amongst those, I was able to make 5 larger pieces that I called piece 1 through piece 5.
And what are we looking at here?
Within item 7-16, those are pieces that were mechanically fit together.
And Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's now been marked as Exhibit 386?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
So that is what I called piece 1. So the piece that is made up of apparent plastic pieces from many of the different items.
Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen and what has now been marked as Exhibit 387?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
That's still piece 1. It's just from a different angle.
And Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen now that has been marked as Exhibit 390?
I do.
What are we looking at here?
That's still piece 1 from another photos taken from another angle.
And Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 392?
I do.
What are we looking at as Exhibit 392?
That is another angle of piece 1.
Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 395?
More bubble plastic.
I do.
And what are we looking at in Exhibit 395?
May I look at my notes?
Sure.
Okay.
Deputy gangs. I don't know much about deputy gangs. Remind me, so you're in LA, Candace? I know you're in California.
Okay. So that is piece 2.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom in a little bit on the stickers on this photograph. And Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 398?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
That is piece 3.
Ms. Vallier, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 399?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That is piece 4.
And what do you recognize that?
That is piece 5.
Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's now up on the screen that's been marked as Exhibit 403?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That's one of the photos comparing item 3-1 and piece 1.
And Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 411?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That's the contents of item 3-1.
And that's prior to you. At what stage of this analysis or comparison process is that?
So that's when I initially looked at item 3-1.
And Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 431?
I do.
And what are we looking at in 431?
So on the left is item 3-1 piece A, and then on the right is piece 1.
And Ms. Blair, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which has now been marked as Exhibit 432?
It's like a broken molly.
I do.
What are we looking at in 432?
That is piece 1 on top of item 3-1 in a mechanical fit.
Is that the mechanical fit that you were talking about earlier in the testimony?
Yes.
Ms. Vallier, in reference to those items that you testified to earlier in item 3-1, the taillight housing, what, if any, conclusions regarding those items as far as the physical match? What, if any, conclusions did you come to?
That item 3-1 and the pieces that make up piece 1 were at one time together as a larger unit.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. Good morning.
Good morning.
You have testified that when evidence comes into the crime lab, it's given crime lab evidence or item numbers, correct?
It's given a case number, and then each piece of evidence gets its own individual item number.
Okay, and if you can just keep your voice up because we want to make sure that the last jurors here can hear you. Consistent with that policy, the evidence that your lab received in this case was also given those item numbers, correct?
Correct.
So I'd like to ask you about one particular item number in this case, 7-18.18. Would you agree with me, and feel free to check your records, but would you agree with me that that was the item number given to, quote, debris from orange t-shirt and gray long sleeve shirt, end quote?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
And again, it's 7-18.18.
Debris from orange t-shirt 7-17 and gray long sleeve shirt 7-18-JO.
Terrific. Item 7-18.18 did not include the orange t-shirt itself, correct?
No.
Believe that you just testified that was given a different item number, which was 7-17?
I believe so.
And 7-18-18 also did not include the gray long sleeve shirt either, correct?
I didn't look at 7-17 or 7-18. I only received the debris from.
Okay, well, yeah, that's my point. So with regard to the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, those were given separate item numbers.
I know, right? Okay, just to the north of LA. Okay. north of LA. So, yeah, I agree about that. And also I was going to say that y'all have no idea. Like, when I was putting this video together, so whenever I have these videos, I start to edit them. I have like the raw footage that is just like of the day of trial, right? And then it's like on the video thing, it has a thing down at the bottom where you can see the sound. It looks like a wave, and it's like when it's louder, it's bigger, and when it's silent, there's nothing there. And if it's just like background noise, it's like really low. But basically, even without watching it or listening to it, you can look at it and you can see, like, for example, when the court's on a break, you can see it from the sound. Or like if it's a really long sidebar and the audio is completely cut, or alternatively, if the audio is not cut, but like it's just, there's nothing happening because it's all they're, for example, at times when they're like, okay, do you recognize this? And they hand it to them, and it's like takes forever, right? And the first thing I do when I start working on a video file is I go through however much I have it done at one time, and I go through and I just start deleting. I just start cutting out and deleting all those things, the breaks, the shit like that, right? Lunch, really long sidebars, just from looking at that. And then once I do that, then I go through and I watch it all and I, edit it that way. So here's what I wanted to say about this witness. So I started, just like always, with deleting all of the long breaks and stuff like that. We're going to be done with her testimony here very shortly. It's only like, I don't know, 17 minutes or something of testimony that we have from her. It's very little testimony. A lot of it's just with the pictures, right? And I didn't cut a lot of her testimony. It's like that's, like, in other words, I didn't cut a lot of her explaining things or whatever. My point is this. She was on the stand for hours and hours and hours. And here's the thing. The number of hours that I cut after cutting sidebars and breaks, but just in between, and here's where it came from. It came from Lolly saying, okay, do you recognize this? Hands a stack of pictures to the witness. They look it over, and that takes 5 minutes or something. And then after that, okay, see, may I approach? That's another, and then, okay, now once they've asked for that permission, then it's like, okay, may I admit into evidence? Okay. And then they say the numbers, and then it takes another 2 minutes for them to put it up on the screen. And then after they get it up on the screen, then they're like, okay, to the witness, like, do you recognize what's on the screen? Yes. And then it's like, okay. And then he asks the court, oh my God, what's her name? Forget her name. Miss Gilman. He asked the court reporter to, like, okay, go to the next thing. It's like the amount of dead time, in other words, even when they're talking, even when it's not a break or a sidebar, even when they're, for this one witness alone, I wanted to make sure I paid attention. Just for this one witness alone, it was over 3 hours. Over 3 hours. And you know what I take away from that? That's all time that is wasted. That is all time that is wasted. Now, I understand it's going to take some time to do certain things. However, the amount of time that is wasted, I've never seen anything like it in a trial ever, where a witness is on a stand and there's so much dead time and just so much. I don't remember I've just never seen anything like this, where there's so much silence when they're not at sidebar and there's a witness on the stand and the jury's present and it's just sitting there and waiting. And the thing is with each batch of pictures, it's like they hand her a batch of pictures. It's like 4 pictures or something, right? And they get through and then it's the same thing over and over again. And like I said, it was like over 3 hours that I cut from this video. That was that type of thing where they could have, that could have been streamlined. I mean, it's really kind of crazy. And so what we're left with, it's like I guessed 17 minutes. It might be less than that. That's basically what we're left with of the testimony of this witness, who was on the stand for like half a day, one day, and then another 2 hours or something the next day. And it was so little testimony. It's insane. It's insane. And when you're watching it in real time, you can feel it's like dragging, taking forever. It's whenever they're admitting pictures or when shit like that, documents, because it takes them so long and they have to do it in these groups. But the thing is that for as bad as that is, you really see it. You have an actual visual for it and an actual numeric to give to it when you're editing the video, and you see the total runtime. let's say it's 6 hours, right? And then you cut, I'm just giving an example, right? And then you cut out the, you know, the sidebars and the brakes or whatever. And let's say it's like, you know, that gets it down to like 3 hours. I'm just making an example, right? 3 hours. And then you cut what should be, it's all during testimony, right? But you cut out all that dead time that's being wasted, and then you're left with 17 minutes. And you see just exactly how much time during this is wasted. It's insane.
And you examined what was the debris allegedly from those shirts, right? 7-18.18, correct?
Correct.
And that debris consisted of different categories, did it not?
There were different pieces of, there were different things inside of it, yes.
Yes, different categories of things, correct?
I'm sure.
All right, so one category was dirt and debris, correct?
Yes.
You did not test the dirt and debris, correct?
Correct.
Another category was, or were, I should say, several apparent hairs.
Yes.
And you did not test those hairs, correct?
Correct.
And another category, I believe you've already testified to, consisted of several pieces of red apparent plastic and one piece of clear apparent plastic that measured 1/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch. Is that accurate?
Okay, so there were several pieces of red apparent plastic and then one piece of clear apparent plastic measuring approximately 1/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch. Yes.
Okay. And I apologize for continually reminding you, but I'm just mindful that everybody needs to hear you. So to the best you can, if you can just keep your voice up, I'll try to do the same. So when those several pieces of apparent red plastic and one piece of apparent clear plastic came into your possession, those pieces were obviously not embedded in either shirt when you examined them, correct?
I don't know. I didn't examine the shirt.
Well, so to my question, the pieces that you saw were not embedded in a shirt when you examined them, correct?
Correct.
And again, that's because you never took possession of any shirt in this case, correct?
Correct.
The pieces were loose and they were not embedded in anything, correct?
The pieces were, well, I examined the debris from the shirt. I don't know what the person who packaged it did to collect that.
Okay. And so it goes without saying that you never saw those pieces on either the orange shirt or the gray long sleeve shirt, correct?
I did not.
And you obviously had no control over how the evidence was handled before it came into your possession, correct?
We have a chain of custody in the laboratory, but I did not follow the evidence as it went through the chain.
Okay, and we'll talk about the chain of custody in a minute. Before this evidence came into your possession, you did not witness who seized it, correct?
But
Correct.
You did not witness who handled it, correct?
Correct.
Before it came into your possession, you don't know who had access to that evidence, correct?
So all of our evidence is stored in locked facilities.
Right, but I guess let me modify that question. Before it came to your lab, you don't know who had access to that evidence, correct?
Correct.
You also don't know, before it came to your lab, whether the shirts in question were at all times kept separate from the red or clear plastic pieces of...
Which it seems like they weren't.
Well, I said pieces of plastic that were in the possession of certain members of the state police, correct?
Correct.
The chain of custody at the crime lab started with noting the state trooper who actually delivered the evidence to your lab, along with the date, correct?
That is.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. The chain of custody
Everybody's
at the
favorite.
crime lab starts with noting which state trooper delivered the evidence to your lab and the date that he or she delivered it, correct?
Or a crime scene responder, but the person who drops off the evidence to the laboratory, yes.
Okay. And in this case, which particular state trooper delivered the orange T-shirt and gray long sleeve shirt to your crime lab?
I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Take a guess.
which state trooper delivered the pieces of red and clear plastic pieces, I should say, that you just testified about?
The item 7-5 to 7-19.
Right. The several pieces of red apparent plastic and one piece of clear apparent plastic measuring 1/8 of an inch by 1/16 of an inch. That's what I'm referring to.
Wait, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. You understand what I'm talking about, right? In terms of the several pieces of red apparent plastic and then the one piece of clear plastic that you have the measurements for?
You're talking about the apparent plastic that I noted in the debris of 7-18.18?
Correct. Which state trooper was it that delivered that?
Do you know?
Sorry, that's like
Proctor.
that's an odd question.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you want her to repeat it, Ms. Giannetti. Go ahead. You have to repeat that, please.
So evidence is
No,
submitted to.
what you just said that he missed.
Oh, I said that's kind of an odd question.
Oh, not for me.
So
Do you have a record of that?
a record of what?
A record of which state trooper delivered that debris to the lab?
So it wouldn't be delivered as like debris. It would be delivered as the individual piece of clothing, which then got assigned item 7-18, I believe. And then as someone analyzes it, each offshoot of that piece of evidence gets a 7-18 point something. So the debris collected from that shirt is 7-18.18.
Okay, all right. Listen, when those several,
He just wants to know who
actually,
brought
let me
that
strike that. Okay, so I want to confirm with you that when you were assigned to this case, you were aware that the date of the incident was January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
All right. And it's your testimony that you don't know which state trooper delivered the shirts to the lab, correct?
I could look at my notes because I have a printed chain of custody.
Sure. If you would check your notes for that, please.
Yeah, check your notes.
Okay, so submission 7, which is everything that's item 7- in this case, was submitted by Trooper Michael Proctor.
Of course it
believe.
was.
Oh, that was the answer to my
Okay.
last question. Thank you. How long after January 29th of 2022, according to your records, did Michael Proctor deliver that clothing to the crime lab?
It was delivered on March 14th, 2022.
Okay, so about 6 weeks or so after January
Yeah, that's
29th,
crazy,
is that
right?
accurate?
That's
Sure.
crazy.
Given that
Wow.
your lab received this evidence on March 14th of 2022,
That's
you
wild.
can't testify to the chain of custody of the clothing
I
or
will
the pieces
say-
of plastic prior to March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct. Do
Oh my
analysis,
god, I did not mean to do that. Sorry, guys.
fibers, paint.
Trying to pause it so I could talk. Oh my god. Hold on.
Okay, so submission 7, which is everything that's item 7- in this
Okay,
case.
that's close to where
Michael
we were.
Proctor's submissions.
Okay, so that was what a mess. I was just trying to pause it so I could talk. What I was going to say is like that didn't register with me previously watching it live or whatever. Like how much time had elapsed between the death. I know they keep calling it the incident, but it's a homicide, or at least it's a death. We don't. The homicide thing's up in the air at this juncture, but anyway. But how much time had elapsed? What did he say? March 16th is when it was finally brought to the crime lab. That's wild. And that's the clothing and the taillight pieces. And we know it was being found like, what did they say? Up to like 3 weeks or something after the night, which was the end of January. They were still finding that taillight pieces like 3 weeks after. But it's interesting because the clothes though, they had those immediately. And from what they're saying here, and we'll probably hear it again because I lost my spot and it might be not, I might have gone back a little bit. Like, anyway, we'll see if we hear it again. But I believe he's saying the clothing and the taillight wasn't submitted until March 16th.
Of the pieces of plastic that you've testified about, your lab received from Michael Proctor several different evidence bags containing red, clear, and black pieces of plastic, correct?
Correct.
Some of those evidence bags contain relatively small pieces of plastic in them, correct?
Correct.
And some of those evidence bags contained larger pieces, right?
Correct.
The evidence bags that you received listed the dates of recovery of those pieces of plastic, did they not?
I believe so.
And the evidence bags that you received also listed the officer who recovered the plastic pieces, right?
I believe so.
And again, when you receive those evidence bags, whatever numbers are on them, your lab assigns them your item number, correct?
Correct.
So I'd like to ask you first about item number 7-8. Do you have a record of that?
Yes.
That is what I just showed you on the screen, correct?
Correct.
And that's where it's indicated what the date of collection was and which trooper collected it, correct?
Fucking hell. Hold
Correct.
on. There's that name. I did not even notice. So I did not know that this officer who we were just talking about earlier, that I didn't know how to spell it. I thought this, to my recollection, this is the first we'd heard of him was with these text messages with Trooper Proctor. I think maybe the name had come up once or twice before. But I'm speaking of Trooper Tachiko, which is how they pronounce it. They pronounce like it's the way that they pronounce it, the phonetic in my mind, the way it would be spelled phonetically is like Tachiko, Tachiko. That's how they say it. But we learned thanks to DSN that it's spelled Dicicco. Anyway, check it out. That's whose name is here on collected by. So the fourth line down, I know y'all can't see my mouse right now. So there it is. So he actually, there it is. And I bet she's about to say that name. But that's the same fucking dude. He was, all those fucked up text messages, they're with him. That makes it all worse. I didn't realize that state trooper was actually involved in this. Because we've heard very little about him, first of all. And second of all, he's not testified. And I don't know if they're going to call him or not. I was under the impression that he was texting this state trooper was just a friend state trooper. I did not know that this state trooper was also responsible for anything in this case. Like, that's insane. Because there's his name right there. Holy shit.
And you would agree with me that that date, February 3rd of 2022, was only 5 days after the January 29th blizzard, correct?
I don't recall the dates of blizzards, but
okay. But let's put it the date of the incident. You would have previously testified that was January 29th, correct?
Correct.
All right. And February 3rd was 5 days after that, right?
Yeah, and I guess the reason.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, Karen laughed about.
Now, Exhibit 279, which is.
And it, like, I don't know if y'all saw it. I say laughed. It was really more a smile. I think it was in a nice way of like, this girl's like, you know, anyway, and I say girl, I know that that's not how this witness identifies, but it's hard to remember that. So anyway, why did I fucking pause it? Y'all, my brain is so fried from yesterday. This is insane. Let me rewind it and try to remember why I paused it. I know there was something important. We'll see.
Only 5 days after the January 29th blizzard, correct?
I don't recall the dates of blizzards, but
okay. Well, let's put it the date of the incident.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Also, yes, Candace, I agree. Thank you. They all need to answer this. Absolutely. I hope they call him too. So what I was going to say is, I'm wondering if the reason that everybody refers to it as the incident, because I've commented on that many times because it seems weird. I'm like, why is everyone calling it an incident?
I wonder if that's like how they have to call it because of the fact that the cause of, or the manner of death rather is undetermined. That's wild, man. Like in this case, it kind of makes sense because like, okay, well, let me put it this way. If I were the victims, if you're the victim's family, that's got to feel terrible because it's like it feels like in a way it's downplaying the fact that he died, right? He died. I almost feel like they should say the night of the death or John O'Keefe's death or the passing or whatever, right? Just to acknowledge that somebody died because the incident just sounds like it could be whatever the fuck. The incident isn't even specific enough to even technically, like if you're going like on a technical level or like if someone were reading it, for example, right, in a transcript, they wouldn't know what you're referring to. It's not specific enough. And technically also, there were so many things that happened that same night. The incident, like which incident? Like there was so much going on that night. There were so many different things that really actually could apply to anything. But I wonder if it is because of the manner of death being undetermined. But yeah, it still seems like you could say the death, right? Like instead of the homicide or the murder, you could say like the death of John O'Keefe. But y'all, I literally never yawn, and I just yawned. I'm so tired from yesterday. It's insane. What was I even gonna say? Yeah, it would feel like if you're the family, it would feel like it feels like they're downplaying the severity. When I say they, I mean everybody, like everybody that's referring to it that way, but that would include the Commonwealth. And anyway, just an interesting thing to think about because I've commented on the fact that they call it that. I've commented on that before. And I was just connecting the dots now that we've heard that the manner of death was undetermined. But again, it still doesn't mean they couldn't say death, right?
You would have previously testified that was January 29th, correct?
Good night,
Correct.
Candace.
Right. And February 3rd was 5 days after that, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, Exhibit 279, which is displayed on the screen now, this is one of the photos taken of some of the contents of item 7-8, is it not?
That's the entirety of the contents of item 7-8.
Okay. You would agree with me that those were the pieces that were inside that evidence bag labeled February 3rd as the date of recovery 5 days after January 29th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you see that there are some relatively small pieces that were allegedly found on February 3rd, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I'd like to contrast some of those pieces with some of the pieces that were found days and weeks later by Michael Proctor. And I'd like to start first with item 7-13. This is, I'd like to display Exhibit 343. Okay. You were previously asked about Exhibit 343, which is now displayed on the screen.
Yes.
And that is the first evidence bag submitted by Trooper Proctor, is it not?
So in my, sorry.
And you know, let me rephrase that. He submitted evidence bags all at one time, correct?
Yes.
All on 314. So when I said the first evidence bag, I meant the earliest date of collection. I should have asked it that way. February 8th of 2022.
Sure. I don't know all of the dates that each item was collected on.
Okay. But in any case, those, according to the evidence bag that you received, the contents of that bag, which were, again, pieces of plastic, correct?
Pieces of apparent plastic.
Pieces of apparent plastic. Those were found 5 days after the pieces that you previously testified were found by the Chico, right, on February 3rd?
Correct.
All right. And February 8th was now 10 days after January 29th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, looking at Exhibit 346, you will agree with me that this particular piece found on February 8th by Trooper Proctor was quite a bit larger than many of the plastic pieces that had been found by Trooper DeChico 5 days earlier on February 3rd, correct?
He says the name, you can hear the D, DeChico. But the way Lolly says it is like Tachico.
There were a variety of sizes of pieces on the other one, but that is what is that, approximately 4-ish inches?
Right, but my point is, Exhibit 346, what's displayed, that plastic piece, is quite a bit bigger than the small pieces that were contained in DeChico's collection, correct?
Then some of those pieces, yes.
Okay. Okay. Item 7-15, the evidence bag that supports that lists the law enforcement officer who recovered the plastic pieces as Trooper Michael Proctor, correct?
Correct.
And the date of recovery of those pieces was February 11th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And again, hearkening back to DeChico's evidence bag from February 3rd, this is now 8 days later that these pieces are found, correct?
Correct.
And it's now almost 2 weeks that these pieces are found after January 29th, right? 13 days?
Correct.
You would agree with me that this particular piece found by Trooper Proctor on February 11th is also quite a bit larger than those small pieces that were contained in Trooper DeChico's evidence collection, correct?
I tell you what, guys, this has like a whole new meaning now. Like, we knew that Trooper Proctor was going to be a problem. Like, we knew that. And we knew that there was a lot of fucked up shit. But at least for me, watching this again, and now that his testimony has started, Trooper Proctor's testimony has started, this has like a whole new weight to it. Knowing that there were these text messages going back and forth where it was like, you know, so clear. Like initially he said, he said something like John O'Keefe was beat up by a woman. What does he say? A woman cop who owned the house or something. Like, it seems like he's kind of confusing Karen with being a police officer and also with a homeowner. But the point is, like, what you can glean from that is that John O'Keefe was beat up. That was his first understanding. And we know that there was other testimony, like from Buchanan, but the first understanding that he had was was like in a fight and got hit with a glass. And then we had I forget his name right now, but the lieutenant from the Massachusetts State Police who was actually not shady. It was like the least shady. Oh, what was his name? O'Hara. Yeah, Lieutenant O'Hara. And he said that his understanding was that the body was hit by a car and dragged. So, you know, but hearing from Trooper Proctor, like his first initial impressions was like the thing about the woman cop beat up by a woman cop or something. But then after that, like the way he talked about Karen being involved, but in these derogatory ways. But the biggest thing being that they were all joking about how, like, you're never going to be able to prove this. And that's, all that shit. Right. And then at the same time, like, the Boston Police Department's going to want to save face and protect their image. And then you have the biggest thing of all, the whole thing with the medical examiner. How to get the medical examiner to rule it as a homicide and all that, right? It's like the level of fuckery when it comes to that, to me, is on a whole other level. Like, planting evidence potentially is bad enough. It's bad enough. But, like, even trying to influence the medical examiner to determine something different with the body, it's like now it's just gone from not just fucking with everything, right? But, like, that's all, to me, in my mind, that's also just how far-fetched the case is. Because you could have a situation, right, where it is a homicide and the medical examiner rules it as a homicide. And then evidence is planted, right? But to think about the fact that it wasn't even ruled a homicide. And then they tried to make that happen and influence that medical examiner. And then the fact that he was teased by his friends and his friends who were also involved in the case about that. Seeing all this shit with the taillight and knowing that it popped up after the fact, little by little, quote unquote, revealed itself. It all just has even more significance in hindsight, at least to me, with all this other context. So.
Correct, on February 3rd?
Correct.
All right. I'd like to move on to item 7-16. And again, you just identified that as the bag supporting item 7-16, correct?
Correct.
That also lists the law enforcement officer who recovered the plastic pieces as Trooper Michael Proctor, correct?
Correct.
And the date of recovery of those plastic pieces was February 18th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
So Trooper Proctor is now finding these pieces over 2 weeks after the smaller pieces were found by Trooper DeChico, correct?
Objection. Sustained.
February 18th is nearly 3 weeks after January 29th, is it not?
Correct.
All right. You would agree with me that this particular piece found by Trooper Proctor on February 18th is also quite a bit larger than those smaller plastic pieces found by Trooper DeChico on February 3rd, correct?
Correct.
This one appears to be about 11 centimeters long, approximately.
Sure.
All right. If I could show Exhibit 376, which is 9B, Mr. Bates. Okay. And you would agree with me that this particular piece found by Trooper Proctor on February 18th is also quite a bit larger than those smaller plastic pieces found by Trooper DeChico back on February 3rd, correct?
Correct.
In fact, that appears to be larger than the piece that you just identified in Exhibit 380, correct?
The one that was just on the screen?
Right.
Yes.
This one appears to be maybe about 18 centimeters long. Does that seem accurate?
I mean, it's longer than the ruler.
Okay, yeah. You would agree with me that this particular piece found by Trooper Proctor on February 18th is even larger than the last one that we just saw, correct?
In length, yes.
Okay. This appears to be about 19 centimeters long.
I mean, longer than the ruler that's up there.
Okay.
But I have the actual measurement in my notes.
Sure. Well, and the precise measurement's not important. I'm just getting at the relative comparison. This one's certainly quite a bit larger than the smaller pieces found by Trooper DeChico back on February 3rd, correct?
Correct.
This larger piece of red plastic, like the previous two that you just identified, were all found on February 18th, about 3 weeks after January 29th, correct, according to your records?
Correct.
And regarding these last three evidence bags, labeled item number 713, 715, and 716 in February of 2022, from February 8th to the 18th, those were all plastic pieces collected by Michael Proctor, correct?
Correct.
And in addition to collecting those pieces...
You turn the lights on, Ms. Giannetti?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. And we can take that down, please?
Yes. In addition to collecting those plastic pieces on all those different days, Michael Proctor was also the person to hand deliver those last three evidence bags, all on March 14th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you do not know what Michael Proctor did or didn't do with those evidence bags of pieces of taillight prior to March 14th of 2022 when your lab received them, correct?
Objection. I'm going to sustain it. We've already asked that.
All right. Now, the taillight of that Lexus sits in the housing of the Lexus, the taillight housing, such that part of the taillight faces the rear of the car and part of the taillight loops around and faces the passenger's side of the car, correct?
Sure.
Right, because it's on the corner.
Sure, yeah.
You'd agree with me that once you received the final pieces of Taillight from Michael Proctor on March 14th, or once your lab received that, you were then able to piece together a majority of the Taillight, correct?
So I wasn't assigned this case until later, once everything had already been submitted to the laboratory.
Right. So it was true that after Michael Proctor submitted these pieces of Taillight on March 14th, it was after that that you were able to do the reconstruction that you testified about, correct?
Correct.
So that's another thing that...
That is the reconstruction, the final reconstruction.
That's another thing that I didn't appreciate the first time around, that as Michael Proctor, Trooper Proctor, is bringing in more and more of these pieces, it's like I guess what the defense is sort of suggesting here is that the law enforcement knew they needed to be able to reconstruct this taillight. And I guess the point being to prove that it's her taillight or that such and such piece was missing. I'm not even really sure because, again, the state has no theory of the case, so I'm not even sure what they're trying to prove. But it all starts with this taillight, right? And that they need to reconstruct this taillight. And so I guess it's sort of this suggestion that they didn't have enough and then they kind of kept finding more pieces, right? So that she could put her puzzle together, if you will. But of course, the question remains, like, why were they showing up after the fact? Why were they just magically revealing themselves? Who knows?
Construction that you were able to do, correct? You would agree with me that there's one section of that taillight that was missing completely, correct?
Correct.
And that missing section is noticeably visible in your reconstruction, is it not?
Yes.
And do you still have that laser pointer there?
I do.
Would you please point to the section of taillight that's missing? Okay. Appears to be a hole on the upper left side of that exhibit.
Is that a question?
Yes, it actually was. I should have said right or correct, but I didn't.
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me, and if we could zoom back out, Mr. Bates, you would agree with me that the portion of taillight that you did not have was strictly on the rear side of the taillight, if I can call it that.
I am not sure what orientation that goes on to a car.
Okay. But in any case, to this day, you do not know where the pieces that make up that hole are or what happened to them, correct?
I do not.
It's going to be important, guys.
No further questions.
When we get to, we're going to see as we go along, we know we've already watched it as well live, but it's also valuable, I think, going back, because it's like seeing this now, it's going to actually be more informative for as we see what happens next, because we're going to see more footage of this vehicle. Like, for example, when it's being towed and when it's at the parents' house, and then also like when it bumps into John O'Keefe's car, that whole thing. And so, and to see specifically, like, to see this part with that missing piece, knowing what's happening, what's coming up next, just gives the context for that. And it's just something we can keep in mind as to that chunk that's missing.
All right, Mr. Le- All right. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Sure. It's Christina Hanley. Hanley is spelled Hanley.
And what do you do for work, ma'am?
I am a forensic scientist at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And how long have you been at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory?
I have been there for approximately 16 years.
Now, ma'am, if I could ask you just a little bit about your educational background, starting with where did you go and what, if any, degree did you receive regard to your undergraduate?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry with a concentration in Forensics from Merrimack College.
And then after receiving those degrees from Merrimack, where did you go from there?
I began working at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab in 2008.
And with respect to examination of glass, what are some of the steps, or what is the process, or what, if any, instrumentality are you using to conduct your examination?
Sure. So when I examine an item that is glass, I document it with photos and notes, making general observations of appearance, color. I examine a portion.
I don't know what it is, you guys, about her testimony. I've thought about this every time when it was happening live, as I was editing the video. Now, I don't know what it is about her testimony. I have such a hard time following it. I don't know if it's because it's so slow, or it's all in the same pitch, or what. I don't know. Do y'all have a difficult time? I will try again. I've tried previously. I will try again to glean anything from her testimony. But so far, even when I was editing the video, I couldn't glean anything. Like, I would listen to the same sections over and over again as I was editing it, trying to figure out what's important and what's not. And I couldn't even, it was so difficult because I can't understand what the point of any of things she says is. So it's tough.
Microscopically and observe certain optical properties. And then I will also check to see if it fluoresces under UV light. And I also will sample it for analytical analysis using a GRIM, which stands for Glass Refractive Index Measurement.
If you could explain to the jury the GRIM device, how does that work?
Sure. So it measures the refractive index. Your refractive index. Your sample is placed into an oil of a known refractive index, and that then gets placed onto a hot stage of the microscope of the GRIM instrument. And it goes through a process of cooling and heating, and it looks for the match point temperature. And from that match point temperature, we're able to determine the refractive index of the glass sample.
And if you recall, as far as starting with item 3-2, how was there any other sort of label associated with that beyond just item 3-2?
3-2 was a clear, apparent drinking glass.
And item 3-3?
Item 3-3, I believe, was the clear, apparent glass pieces recovered from the bumper of the vehicle.
And then item 7-12?
That was some clear, apparent glass that was recovered. It was recovered from the ground.
In the ground at 34 Fairview Road, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And lastly, item 7-14?
7-14 was also a clear, apparent piece of glass that was recovered from the road.
Now, with reference to item 3-2, the drinking glass, what, if any, observations did you make or did you note during the course of your examination of that?
Sure. So it appeared to have broken, irregular edges. And that was all I had noted at that point.
Did Did you take measurements as far as height and width?
I did.
Do you recall what those were?
I would need to refer to my notes for that.
Yes, you can use your notes.
So the diameter of the bottom of the drinking glass was 2 3/4 inches.
What, if any, observations or measurements did you take in reference to that particular item?
Sure. So I noted that there was some clear plastic material, as well as some red plastic material. And I would have to refer to my report for exact measurements of those items.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Excellent. Moving right along. Talking home.
Would you agree that there's a lot of numbers that were discussed, correct?
A lot of...
I compared 3-2.
So the other thing, it's so interesting to me that, take for example, with the previous witness, the puzzle pieces on direct, the prosecution, they put up all the exhibits, right? Here's the piece of this, and here's the number, here's blah blah, right? With this witness who's currently testifying, I did not cut any testimony with exhibits. Believe it or not, there's no exhibits. I believe maybe there's this exhibits in terms of the chain of custody with the envelopes on cross, but there's no exhibits or photographs of any of the glass that they're talking about, which is bizarre. Because how the hell, like, the previous witness was working on the taillight. So she didn't handle the glass. Whether or not they looked at it and called it apparent plastic or apparent glass, everything she was testifying to had to do with the taillight and putting together the pieces that made the taillight. So anything else that was determined to be glass was turned over to this current witness for further testing. And that includes this drinking glass. Have we seen any pictures of it? I feel like it's been talked about so much that I'm imagining pictures of it, but I don't think we've seen any pictures of it. And the thing is that if we were seeing it, it would have to come through this witness. This is the only way. Like, so I mean, how is it that they're talking about her testing it? They're talking about it being submitted, and this is the chain of custody. She's the one that tested it. She's the one that gives it a new number when it enters the crime lab and all this, and then passes it along to the next person. How the fuck are we not seeing pictures of it? And it's so interesting because the jury must notice a huge difference, right? Because with the last witness, however long it took, which was hours, we saw pictures of even the teeniest, tiniest little pieces of everything, and you saw what exhibit number, and when they went through the whole thing. And now with the glass, there's not a single picture. So what the jury's hearing, when that's what he's about to refer to here, Jackson, with all the numbers, is that as they're talking about it on direct, it's just evidence number, this piece number, blah, blah, blah. And they read off the number, and then she answers a question about it. But the jury has literally no context for what it is. There's no pictures. It's not like they're being shown this picture and then asked a question. I don't understand for the life of me how we're not being shown, and the jury's not being shown pictures of the glass. It's like, it's just arbitrary with these numbers, right? It's like literally there's no context for it at all. I don't know. I don't understand.
2 to 7-12 and sub A, B, C, and D of 712 were compared with 3-2 and 3-3. A lot of numbers, right?
Yes, there are a lot of numbers, items.
Okay. I want to try, if I can, see how well it goes, to clear that up and categorize those.
Thank you.
Perhaps, would you agree that we could put the items that you compared and examined in your analysis?
It would make sense. Okay.
It wouldn't make sense from a standpoint that I can't imagine how it's possible, like legally speaking. But it would make sense from a strategy standpoint that the Commonwealth would not have the pictures in because it would make it much harder for the defense to talk about it, right? Because clearly what the first thing he has to do is try to make sense of this, because the jury's been given a bunch of numbers that mean literally nothing because there's no pictures. And they didn't put them in categories, right? It's just arbitrary numbers. So his first challenge before getting to anything actually about the glass itself is, how can we try to understand this in a way that actually means anything? But again, how the fuck is that even possible? How can they not submit the photos? I don't know. I don't understand.
In 4 categories: 3-2, the cup or the glass; 3-3, the bumper glass; 7-12, the 9 pieces of glass recovered by a trooper named Buchnick at the scene; and 7-14, a single piece of glass recovered by a trooper named Proctor at the scene. Would you agree that those 4 categories are basically what you analyzed between and among each other?
Yes, there's 4 total items.
Okay.
And I'm not even clear, again, because the state has no theory, I'm not even clear what all this glass is supposed to be. Is all of this glass supposed to be from a drinking glass? Or is it supposed to be other things? Like, I don't even know. It's not even clear to me what this Commonwealth is hoping to pretend is the case. It would seem it has to all be from the drinking glass, right? Because, like, what other glass is there? But I don't know. Again, nothing's clear, so.
And within those items, there were some subcategories of items in some of those, correct?
Yes, because some of the items had multiple pieces, so they were labeled just to keep track of the pieces.
Okay, so if I could ask you to take those one at a time, pardon me, 3-2, under that column, visually, that would be a single item, just the cup, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
3-3, under that single item, the bumper, there would be 5 sub-items, A, B, C, and D, and E.
Yes, that's correct.
Public school education. Under 7-12, the third column, there's 9 pieces, correct? A, B, C, D, E, F as in Frank, I, K, and L are the 9 glass pieces, correct?
Correct.
They're close to being alphabetical, not quite toward the end, right?
Correct. I would have to look at my report for the exact letters, but
Sure, go ahead and look at your report.
No, why? Oh, God.
the 9 pieces of clear apparent glass were labeled as A, B, C, D, E, F, I, K, and L.
Okay. And then, of course, the last category would be 7-14. That's a single piece of glass that was recovered at the scene by Trooper Proctor, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Objection, Your Honor. Just
So I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute on this.
So the last category we were talking about, 7-14, that was a single piece of glass, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to ask you to take your comparisons one at a time, if I can. You compared the cup in 3-2 to the 9 pieces recovered at the scene.
Okay.
A, B, C, D,
might answer my
E,
question
F,
about this
I, K, and L, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Of those pieces that I just mentioned, the cup was a match to A, B, C, D, F, and K, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Pieces E and I were compared to each other, and you matched them, correct?
Part of why
So, item.
her answers are so pointless. It's just this is also pointless without pictures. I swear to God, this is just excruciating. But part of the reason why I think it's confusing is because the first piece of glass is called a cup. Well, that to me means it must be intact. Why? Because if you think about it, if it's a cup that's been broken in any way, technically that's a piece, right? Like if you take a cup, let's say you have a cup that breaks in just 2 pieces and you pick up one of them, that's a piece of a cup. Like that's a piece. Like if you're in the business, like in this case, right, of parts of a whole, is it a whole or is it parts of a whole? Is it a piece or a whole? If it's not the complete item, it has to be a piece, right? So that's why it's confusing when they refer to the cup. It's like, it sounds to me like it has to be the entire intact cup, right? Otherwise, it's a piece. However, what he's trying to ask her, or he's saying it as if it's affirmative, that some of the glass from the quote unquote cup, I don't understand how this is possible, matches other pieces of glass. If we had pictures, it would answer a lot of this, wouldn't it?
7-12 was previously examined by another analyst in the trace unit. Specifically, E and I received, when I opened this item for examination, E and I were taped together.
This makes matters not at all.
They were found to have a physical match by the analyst who previously examined the item.
Great. Importantly, E, I, and L, however, were not found to match the cup in 3-2, correct?
That's correct.
All right. You also compared the cup in 3-2 to the 5 items recovered on the bumper in 3-3, correct?
I did examine I compared item 3-2 to 2 of the pieces marked as A and B from item 3-3,
and those
which was
deemed not to match the cup, correct?
Correct.
And you did not analyze C and D, correct? I'm assuming that's because of size.
So the rest of the items were not used for physical match examination due to size and condition.
So as you
That's
see
a yes,
here,
ma'am. That's a yes.
none of the
That's a
items
yes.
on the bumper were deemed to match the cup, correct?
Correct.
All right. So you did end up analyzing one of the items on the bumper, item E as in echo, and you analyzed that against the single piece of glass found at the scene in 7-14, correct?
Correct.
And you used both, well, you used a variety, it sounds like, of analyses, including microscopy, UV light, the glass refractive index, GRIM process, correct?
That's correct.
You also used the FTIR, is that right? Infrared spectrometry?
That's incorrect.
Okay,
my guess, I'm going to go ahead and put this on the record. I think the reason he asked that question isn't because he's confused and thinks she used it. I think it's because they're going to have an expert witness for their case in chief come in who uses that and gets a different result about this glass. That's my guess. I think that's why he's asking her that, to get it on the record that she did not use it. And stuff like that, it's like, I always think it's so interesting that attorneys will say something like that. Like, that's just this one question. It doesn't come up again. It's just one little thing. You didn't use this one specific thing. It's like you're rattling off a list of all the techniques that you use. She's been on the stand at this point forever. I had cut a lot of it because there's just so much dead time, just like with the previous witness. and there's no context for any of it. But anyway, you know, it's like she's just talking about this equipment and it goes on. And it's like, you use this and this and this. And then he says, and then you use this thing. And she's like, no, I didn't. And that's it. Right. I think the reason he asked is because they're going to have, again, an expert. But it's just asking a lot of the jury that they would remember that one detail when there's so much in this case, and this case is going on for so long, that when an expert comes in, God knows how long, much longer later, and he says, oh, I use this method, the jury's going to be like, oh, that method, that's the one method that Christina Hanley, if they can remember her name, right? Oh, that she didn't use that. Like, how the fuck, you know? And I guess it's really kind of up to them, to the attorneys, to connect those dots through their lines of questioning with their witness to show that the other witness didn't use that method. However, I feel like you probably don't necessarily need this witness to say it, right? Because with the experts, that's their thing. They get to review what the other witnesses did and didn't do. And they can say they didn't, so-and-so did not use this method, or so-and-so did use this method, or whatever the case may be. But anyway, I still think it's just, that's the goal, is to set it up for an expert.
Did not use FTIR in this analysis.
FTIR.
I did not.
Okay. But in the analysis that you did use, you found that there was a match between item E on the bumper,
yeah, I'm going to call
and the
it
single piece of glass in 714.
FTIR.
Correct?
They were found to be consistent. They were found to be consistent in physical and instrumental properties.
Okay. So, importantly, you also compared the single piece of glass in our sort of visual column 4, 714,
yeah,
that single piece of glass.
This is insane.
To the
I
cup.
wonder, it's like there must be some pre-trial litigation that keeps these pictures from coming in, but I can't fathom why. I don't know how or why this wouldn't be coming in. I mean, if I were on the jury, this would be shady. I mean, it's like there's already been so much, but like, it's especially obvious when you take a jury, if let's say they've never watched a trial, they've never been a juror before, they don't know anything about any of it. They learn as they go. And at this point, they've just seen a previous witness with this taillight, right? Where every single teensy tiny little smallest piece of plastic was given a number and was shown as evidence on the screen, and they saw all of it. And for better or worse, whatever the case may be, like they saw it. So they now know you're supposed to see pictures of this shit. So then they follow that with this witness with the glass, and they're not being shown any of these pictures. Like, the jury must be like, what's going on, right? Had there been no pictures at all in the trial about anything, maybe they would be like, well, I guess we don't see pictures. That's just normal, right? But anyway, you see what I mean? It's like you're educating them as to what's the standard of practice and what's normal and what they should be seeing. I just don't understand. There's just so much I don't understand about this case with the Commonwealth, you know?
We found that it didn't match, correct?
Correct.
All right. So you tested the single piece of glass found in the fourth column, 714, against the 9 pieces of glass found in 712, A, B, C, D, E, F, I, K, and L, correct?
I did compare item 714 to item 3-2 and the 9 pieces in item 7-12.
So another way to put that would be you analyze column 4 against column 3 now, correct?
I examined them for a possible physical match.
And they did not match, correct?
There was no physical match to item 714.
Why can't you just see
Okay.
You've taken a look at that single page document?
Swear to God, y'all.
Yes.
Does that appear to accurately reflect in sort of a visual manner what you just testified to about your analysis of each of these pieces, irrespective of the text?
So here, this must be, my guess is whatever he's handed her, she's going to say she hasn't seen it before. I wonder if this comes from their expert, the one who's going to testify. And my guess is they're going to use the FTIR thing, and she didn't. But regardless, do you see they're having to make every attempt to give any type of visual aid because there are no pictures? This is so bizarre that the defense is making some sort of a graphic just to try to be like, or here's what we're talking about, here's a visual, and they can't even display this for the jury because it's not the actual pictures. So why don't we have the actual pictures then instead? It's frustrating for me.
On the item, just the analysis of the items specified in that document.
I've never seen this before. I'm not quite sure what.
My question is a relatively simple one. Is this and if you don't understand something on the document, just say so. Is this a visual representation, an accurate visual representation of what you just testified to in terms of what matched and what didn't match? Where the green matches, the circle with the red through it doesn't match?
I would need to go through my conclusion and compare to confirm.
Fair enough. It is accurate to say, we'll use a cheat sheet for a second. It is accurate to say that the cup was not found to match any items that were found on the bumper. That's correct, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Also, it's fair to say that the piece recovered under 714, the single piece of glass recovered under 714, does not match either the cup, nor does that piece match any of the 9 pieces in 712, correct?
So that's correct.
Again, I really would wish we knew what the deal is with this cup and could see pictures, but we have to keep in mind, again, just like with the straw, this glass could be literally from anywhere, from anything. Like, there's of course the possibility that glass was planted or whatever, but just as likely, or let me say it better, more likely, let me back up. Let's say that you're investigating a crime scene and you're not corrupt and you're not fucking with things and you're an actual legitimate person. And like take even, for example, like an accident, like an everyday accident on the road or whatever, and somebody cracks a windshield or breaks a windshield, right, or whatever, and there's glass. If you're there with the crime scene, you're not going to know. You're going to have a whole area, right, roped off, potentially, and it's like you don't know what glass came from what. Is it from this windshield or was it already there? Is it from some other accident a year, whatever ago, right? So, but you would have to just collect all the glass, and the glass could be from literally anything. And then you'd have to have it tested, and I guess then someone would have to figure out, like, oh, is this glass actually from the thing that broke during this accident, or was this glass from something else, right? And so my point is, like, even if there's not any type of nefarious intention going on or whatever, random glass on the road could be from anything, right? But you could understand how, yes, it's not bad that they collect it to have it tested because technically, yeah, they don't know what glass is from what. However, the problem is that things didn't match and it was still entered in as evidence. Because if it doesn't match the rest of the glass, it's not relevant. It's not part of the case. And then also, further, again, no pictures of any of it, which is just so shady, man.
714, there was no physical match between 714 and 3-2 or any of the pieces in 7-12.
Thank you for that. And then my final question is, the only piece of material, glass material, that was recovered from the bumper, item E, the only thing that any piece on that bumper matched was the single piece of glass found in 714. Correct?
So So piece E from item 3-3 was the piece that I examined microscopically and instrumentally.
Answer the question.
It was found to be consistent in physical and instrumental properties with 7-14.
And that's the only piece of material on that bumper in that section. In other words, in 3-3, that matched anything else in your analysis. The piece that was found singularly at under 7-14, correct? The only match.
Yes, it was found to be consistent.
Thanks. That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
So,
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth calls Sergeant Yuri Buchanan to the stand.
Okay.
so the thing about her is I don't even think she's being evasive. I don't know what her deal is. I just don't know why she talks like that. It's just weird. I can't make heads or tails of it. It's so hard to follow. It's like, it's not like where other people are being evasive and they ask a question and like they could be saying yes, but instead they're just giving some long-winded answer. It's like, while that's happening, it doesn't feel like it's out of being evasive. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why. It's like, it's so weird. I can't figure it the fuck out. Like, it's like if you were to ask her, oh, so like, is this the street that you live on? Instead of saying yes, it would be like, I don't even know how to give an example because it makes so little sense to me. But like, the street that I live on was found to be consistent with the place where I also happen to live. Like, it's just like, the answer is yes. Like, there's no point. Like, it's not even, the reason I guess I feel like it's not evasive is because there's not even a point to it. Right. So anyway, but y'all, while the plan was to go through, Trooper Buchanan, for the rest of the day here, I am still so beat from yesterday. That was a lot. And we're going to have more here shortly in a number of hours with Trooper Proctor. And I am like, I'm like never tired. I'm like the Energizer Bunny and I'm just never tired. And, you know, this is so funny how this has really drained me. I am so tired. So, I'm going to try to conserve some squirrel energy for tomorrow because I'm going to need it. Y'all are going to need it. And I'm going to go ahead and call it here. And then on the next recap, we will pick up from here where we left off. And yeah, but we will be here tomorrow. I will stream for as long as I can while Trooper Proctor's on the stand. I don't know what to expect, y'all, if they're going to rest their case after him. I mean, without calling the medical examiner, maybe. Again, as we all know, this is messed up, but like, it seems like maybe they're not going to call them ME because of the undetermined factor for cause and manner of death. And also because they have tried to get in testimony through Trooper Buchanan and Trooper Proctor as to the injuries. But I don't know who else is left. I mean, it would be great if they called the other troopers, like to Chico and stuff, but it might just be that the defense calls them. So, you know, is Trooper Proctor going to be their last witness? It'll be interesting to see. And we might learn that tomorrow. But the thing that we do know is whenever the prosecution rests their case in chief, that's when we will have the motion for directed verdict, which, as y'all know, I'm very much looking forward to. So anyway, we will find out tomorrow what happens, and we will be watching that. And if it is going to be a thing where, you know, they're going to continue on after, I mean, I know it's supposed to be a full day. So very likely I'll end up doing like a morning and an afternoon stream like I did on yesterday. Right now, I just have it as one because I just figured we'll just see what happens because, you know, we'll just sort of see. We'll just see what happens depending on how long he goes and when they finish up with him and who's next and whatever. So, but if need be, I'll do an AM and PM like I did yesterday. But anyway, as always, Thanks so much for watching, guys. Love y'all. Thanks for being a squirrel. See you guys on the next one, which is going to be in like 9 hours, 9-ish hours for more Trooper Proctor. And I will go ahead and roll the outro. See y'all soon.